Everyone, and welcome to this morning's Board of Commissioners meeting for Benton County. I want to remind everyone to please silence your cell phones. And if you wish to address the board during the public comment, please add your name to the sign-up sheet out in the back at the table at the entrance. For online attendees who'd like to comment, please announce yourself during introductions and indicate you wish to provide comments. If you're presenting to the board today, the mics at the front are active when it is showing red at the top, which is a little counterintuitive. And you need to use the mics, have them fairly close to your mouth in order to actually project. That is it for welcoming remarks. We will now turn to introductions. I'm Zan Ojiro. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the board chair this year. We do introductions through the room and online. So if you please, once we are to that point, pipe up in the audience.
Pat Malone, Commissioner.
Nancy Wise, Commissioner and Vice Chair.
Vance Crony, County Council.
Rachel McEnany, County Administrator.
Michael
Kern, I'm a district forester for the Department of Forestry in West Oregon. Leo Williamson, protection forester for yes, out of the unit.
I am Brent Griffiths from the State Fire Marshal's Office, Regional Mobilization Coordinator assigned to Benton County.
Hi, I'm Stacy Marinelli. I'm Lead Peer Specialist with Benton County.
I'm Rose Bricker, she, her pronouns. I am the founder and a member of the Philomath Pride Collective.
I'm Amanda Polly, she, her. I'm also here as part of the Philomath Pride Collective.
I'm Jessica Haugen, I'm the Executive Director of the Benton County Historical Society.
I'm Samantha Bailey, she, her pronouns. I'm a resident and employee of Benton County.
Hi everyone, April Holland, she, her, serves interim health department director.
Hello everyone, this is Dalia Cancer, Health Navigation Program Manager for Benton County.
I'm Rebecca Christie. I use she, her, and my position is Health Navigation Supervisor for Outreach.
Brian Mirza, I'm the Grant and Health Program Coordinator for the Mid-Atlantic Transport Network and the Board President for the Mid-Atlantic Transport Network as well.
Sticky data pronouns, Executive Director of the Mid-Atlantic Transport.
I'm Kate Deloach, they, Vice President of the Board of the Mid-Atlantic Transport Network, also a Health Equity Program Coordinator with the Support Network, and a skills trainer for the Health.
Michelle Bangs, I am the lead housing coordinator for Benton County Behavioral Health with the Health Department. I am also AFSCME's Local 2064 Vice President.
Kyla Lane Cooper, I use she, her pronouns. I work at the Benton County Behavioral Health ESA program.
I'm Reed Wise, I'm Commissioner Wise's husband.
Cynthia Lepper, she, her pronouns.
Good morning, Sarah Bernstein, she, her, with Benton County Health Department.
I'm Matt Gillespie, he, him pronouns. I'm the Healthy Communities Coordinator at the Benton.
Hi, good morning, buenos dias. Rocio Munoz, ella, she, her pronouns. With the Health Department.
Amanda Matthews, BOC Stats.
and online.
Good morning, I'm Jeff Van Arsen. I'm the Benton County Sheriff.
You made a quick trip back to your office.
I did. I had stuff to do and I didn't want to miss this. This is quite a meeting.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all for sharing your introductions. It's always wonderful to know who's in the room. We are now going to review and approve the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we will consider it approved and move on to our proclamation. So I would welcome Dharma and Rose up to the table. And while they are approaching the table, I want to To give you a little bit of background information about our two presenters, Dharma will be reading the Pride Month proclamation this morning, and Rose then will provide information about an upcoming community event in Philomath. Dharma Mirza is the president of the board, as you heard earlier, of the Mid-Willamette Trans Support Network. She's also an artist, activist, scholar, and cultural health advocate based in Corvallis. Dharma is a two-time OSU alumna, where she's currently pursuing her PhD in women, gender, and sexuality studies and public health. Her research focuses on sexual and behavioral health equity, drug policy, harm reduction, critical feminist epidemiology, and reducing health stigma. Dharma is a tri-chair for the Oregon Health Authority's Measure 110 Oversight and Accountability Council. She also serves the Department of Education's Recovery School Advisory Council and on Benton County's Mental Health Addictions and Developmental Disabilities Advisory Committee, fondly known as MADAC. Dharma is the founder and mother of a local drag family, the House of Dharma, which hosts regular drag shows and fundraisers and two-spirit LGBTQIA+ events throughout the region. The Trans Support Network was founded in 2016, and it is a vital force now here in the area supporting the community. Rose Bricker is the founder of Philomath Pride, helping to organize Philomath's first ever official Pride event 2 years ago at Philomath City Park. And originally from the Big Island of Hawaii, she's lived in the Willamette Valley since 2015. A service-oriented heart beats in her chest, and she's been an active community organizer for most of her life. Currently, she's a member of the Philomath Park Advisory Board and the Philomath Inclusivity Committee, and Rose has also worked in various roles for the State of Oregon's Department of Human Services since 2019. With that, Dharma, please.
Is it on now? Oh, there we go. Right. So in the matter of proclaiming June 2024 as 2S LGBTQI+ Pride Month in Benton County, this June, jurisdictions around the world are celebrating their two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, and intersex, or 2S LGBTQI+ community members in what is commonly known as Pride Month. We recognize there are sexual orientations, romantic orientations, gender identities, and sexes that may be included under the 2S LGBTQI+ term and others not reflected here, including but not limiting to questioning asexual as ace, pansexual, non-binary, genderqueer, and other gender ethnic minority groups. Pride Month was established in response to years of organizing efforts led by trans people of color, drag queens, and other 2S LGBTQI+ activists following the Compton Cafeteria Riot in 1966 in San Francisco, Stonewall Uprising in 1969 in New York City, and other efforts across the nation to resist the oppressive laws and social restrictions that threaten the safety and well-being of their communities. Over the past 54 years, Pride has become a celebration of community, perseverance, and survival worldwide. Pride embraces artistic expression through multiple mediums: visual art, poetry, spoken word, drag performances, and many more. Pride helps people explore their gender identities and sexual orientations and allows straight and cisgender allies to express support and solidarity. 2S LGBTQI+ people have always been a part of our community, but they have not always had support or safety to be out. 2S LGBTQI+ people have been subject to persecution and sterilization since long before the Civil Rights era, and in 1952, the American Psychiatric Association listed homosexuality and gender diversity in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, DSM, as a mental disorder. During this time, intersex infants and children began to be subject to social and surgical interventions, a practice that is ongoing. Many Benton County community members face legislative actions and measures meant to undermine the autonomy of 2S LGBTQI+ people and make them second-class citizens. In 1992, Oregon's ballot measure 9 tried to legalize discrimination against 2S LGBTQI+ community members and prevent all public entities, including educational institutions, from supporting these groups. Organizations such as the Corvallis Lesbian Avengers fought back against ballot measure 9, and it was defeated. However, community members near Corvallis were subject to violence. On September 26 that same year, 2 Salem residents, Hattie Mae Cohens and Brian Mock, were killed in a firebombing attack. Hattie Mae Cohens was a Black lesbian woman and Brian Mock was a disabled gay man. The 2S LGBTQI+ community saw this attack as being motivated by homophobia, encouraged by advocates of ballot measure 9. 4 individuals who are identified as white supremacists were arrested in connection with these killings. More recently, in 2021, 3 men were arrested and charged with assault in connection to an attack on a transgender woman at a local convenience store in Corvallis. Benton County has a history, though, of supporting the 2S LGBTQI+ community. Corvallis and Oregon State University have been home to formal organizations since 1976, allowing individuals to find a sense of home and comfort. In 2004, Oregon's ballot measure 36 passed, defining marriage as a union of one man and one woman. Because of this, Benton County officials halted all marriage licenses at this time, including those for one man and one woman. Linda Modrell, a Benton County commissioner at the time, indicated that they would not hand out any marriage licenses until everyone was treated equally. It wasn't until 2014 when this measure was declared unconstitutional by U.S. federal district court judge, who stated that this violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the United States. Legislation has and continues to harm the 2S LGBTQI+ community, especially transgender and non-binary youth and intersex babies and children. Ongoing efforts led by community organizers, 2S LGBTQI+ artists, and students have helped to transform Corvallis into a cultural hub for regional drag performers, political activists, and policy advocates across the state. Local organizations and groups have continued building community resilience for community members. A few of those groups and organizations are Intersection Parent Connection, a parent group for parents of kids in the queer community, the Mid-Willamette Trans Support Network, Oregon State University Pride Center, Out and About Youth Support Group for 2S LGBTQI+ teenagers, Rainbow in the Clouds, a local group that holds a monthly queer dance party, Pride Corvallis, and the Philomath Pride Collective. Pride Month is a time to reflect upon our history, support 2S LGBTQI+ communities, celebrate our identities, and make our communities welcome for all sexual orientations, gender identities, romantic orientations, and sexes. While we celebrate the lives of 2S LGBTQI+ community members, we must also be committed to saving their lives. Benton County is proud to offer gender-affirming care to patients, is committed to equity for all, and supports everyone honoring their sexual orientations, gender identities, romantic orientations, and sexes during Pride Month and every day of the year. Therefore, let it be proclaimed that June is 2S LGBTQI+ Pride Month in Benton County, and all community members are invited to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
I move to proclaim June 2024 as 2S LGBTQI+ Pride Month in Benton County, Proclamation P 2024-014.
Second.
All in favor, please signify with an aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much. And Rose?
Hello, my name is Rose Brecker, and I'm the founding member of the Philomath Pride Collective. We are a grassroots community-led event that is transforming and growing each year. This will be our third year hosting a family-friendly celebration for the LGBTQIA2S+ community and creating an intentionally inclusive space for all. Philomath Pride 2024 will be on Saturday, June 15th at Philomath City Park from 12 to 4 p.m. The event will have community resource sharing, lawn games with Jackson Street Youth Ambassadors, and crafts with Maxativity Creative Space. Thanks to a sponsorship from Benton County Health, there will also be free mud oven pizza for everyone. In addition to the amazing Dharma hosting Drag Bingo, we will also have a full lineup of live entertainment. And this year will feature Philomath's first ever Pride Parade. I want to extend a personal invitation to everyone here to attend, and thank you for all that you do for our community.
Thank you. Sounds like a great event. I hope I can make it. Any other comments from the board? Okay. Well, thank you very much. This has been a wonderful celebration so far, and we have the whole month to continue, and of course, the rest of the year. Thank you. With no comments from the public, we will then move on into our regular agenda. The first item on our work session agenda is an update from the Benton County Historical Society with Jessica Haugen.
Is that close enough? Great. right. It's my first time giving an official presentation to the Board of Commissioners. So I'm excited, and I'm definitely going to point this in the wrong direction when I try to move my slides. So I also get excited and I might forget entirely about the slides. So please let me know if I do that. So good morning. My name is Jessica Haugen. I'm the Executive Director for the Benton County Historical Society. I've been there almost 3 years now, which has gone by in a flash. I know most of the folks at the front of the room here are familiar at least with parts of our history, but I thought since it's the first time I'm giving an official presentation that I would start with a brief history of the Benton County Historical Society, just to remind everyone where we started before I start talking about where we are at now. So, a brief history. In 1951, the Benton County Pioneer Historical Society was formed with a mission and mandate to collect, preserve, exhibit, and publish material of historical character, especially that relating to the history of Benton County and to the Oregon country. Built in 1867 as a college and subsequently used as a church, by the 1970s, the Philomath College building had been empty for decades and was in poor condition. A group of local citizens came together to save it, and after initial renovations were complete, the building was offered to BCHS to use as a museum. As our name is very long, I will refer to us as BCHS throughout the presentation. The Philomath College building was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in the late 1970s, and the museum opened in 1980 after further renovations were completed. In 1995, Oregon State University closed its Horner Museum. BCHS inquired about the fate of the collection. There's a picture of the collection up on the screen there with Bruce the Moose, our current mascot, in the middle of it. After years of negotiations, we assumed ownership of and responsibility for the collection in 2005. Prior to this acquisition, we had around 60,000 artifacts in our collection. This collection was also around 60,000 artifacts, so we doubled our collection by acquiring the Horner Museum collection. We acquired this collection because it was assembled in Benton County for the people of Benton County, although the artifacts in the collection span time and span the globe. It is highly unusual for a county historical society to have a collection that represents much outside of their geographical region. It gives us a lot of opportunity to tell stories with a lot more context and additional information than a lot of historical societies have, which is really exciting. In anticipation of acquiring and displaying the Horner collection, the Society purchased the Copeland Lumber Company property in downtown Corvallis in 1999. Eventually, the historic structure on that property was deemed unfit for use. It would have cost much more to retrofit it than it would to tear it down and build new. Originally, the plan was to build a storage warehouse for the collections on this property. Thankfully, someone suggested that perhaps that wasn't the best use of the property. Instead, we built it behind the Philomath Museum. In late 2007, construction of the Peter and Rosalie Johnson Collection Center was completed. In early 2008, we began to move both collections in. So there's a photo of the Johnson Collection Center up on the screen. It's a 13,000 square foot state-of-the-art museum storage facility. Many other museums from the state and the region come to look at ours as a model when they are looking at building their own storage facilities. Once we knew where we were going to store all these things, of course, we needed to figure out where we were going to display all of them. So the Copeland building, as mentioned, was demolished in 2005. Allied Works Architecture designed the Corvallis Museum. They also designed the Clifford Still Museum. They've done significant work on the Museum of Arts and Design in New York City, Seattle Art Museum, and a number of other significant museums across the country. So there we have it. The planned opening of the Corvallis Museum in April 2020 was delayed due to the pandemic. We finally opened in February of 21 in the midst of pandemic restrictions. And for those of you who don't remember, at that point in time, museums were allowed 6 visitors at a time by advance reservation only. So here we are, 1 organization, 2 museums. So the restrictions were lifted in July of 2021. I came on board in August of 2021 as the director. So we have quite a bit to figure out as an organization. The first thing we did was sign up for a program called the Museum Assessment Program, which is run by the American Alliance of Museums, a national organization for museums and museum professionals. MAP is an introspective look at your organization. They send you a significant workbook to fill out. You do a lot of homework looking at where your organization has been, where your organization wants to go. They assign you an outside peer reviewer who's the executive director of another museum who does a multiple day site visit, getting to know your organization. They review that entire workbook that you fill out, and the end result is a report that has kudos in it. It has recommendations for how you can do better, et cetera. We undertook that, and once it was done, we immediately rolled into strategic planning, as we did not have a current strategic plan. So this strategic planning process was the very first time that the entire staff and board were involved in the strategic planning process. I feel very firmly that I can't ask staff to support a plan that they're not a part of creating. So we worked through that process. As we worked through all of this, it became very clear we needed to get back to square one. We needed to look at our mission statement, which had not been updated since the 1980s. So here is our new mission statement. The Benton County Historical Society connects our community by preserving and sharing its diverse, evolving stories through history, culture, and art. This is a significant change from our past mission statement, which talked about collection and preservation and was very introspective on us as an organization rather than looking out at our community and what we can do to serve them. We wrote new vision and values to go with this as well. So we achieve this through authenticity. We provide access to history and culture through well-documented collections, accurate interpretation, and reliable scholarship. Curiosity. We encourage curiosity about history and culture within ourselves and our community when sharing and exploring the relevance of the stories we tell. Cultural humility. We respect diverse cultures and perspectives and continually challenge our biases by engaging in meaningful dialogue with others. Excellence. We strive to meet the highest professional standards through combining best practices and innovation in order to serve our community and engage at the deepest level. Our vision, we are a center of the community, fostering dialogue and ideas that catalyze an inclusive understanding of our past and culture and consideration of the shared future we hope to create. So as you can see, core to everything that we're talking about moving forward is community, how we can best serve Corvallis, Philomath, and the rural areas of Benton County. We've been building a number of partnerships over the last few years. So we've been working with Casa Latinos Unidos, their Youth in Action program, which is a year-long program that culminates in the finale project. That project was exhibited as an exhibit in the Corvallis Museum over 5 days recently, which was very fun. We're also in discussion with them to work with us to provide Spanish-speaking docents for guided tours when we get requests for that, which will be a great change for us. We've been working with the Art Center. As you guys all know, the programming space at the Art Center is not accessible to anyone with any physical disabilities. Our building was built to be accessible, so we have offered them our space to use for quite a bit of their programming over the last few years. Some of the programming we have created in partnership, some of it has been their programming in our space. They've been hosting a lot of their spring break and summer camps, bless you, in our building, which is so much fun to have the kids in there and all the art making happening. It's been wonderful. We've been partnering with Cornerstone's Living Studios program. They meet monthly in the Corvallis Museum. That program offers neurodiverse adults an opportunity to create art in community. We partnered with Prax, and we have a lot of exciting things coming with Prax. Our current temporary exhibit at the Corvallis Museum, Spirit Coalescent, came out of a project that Delbert Anderson was involved with. Delbert was one of the 3 Indigenous musicians that Prax commissioned to create the new work that premiered for their opening weekend. Both projects were born of a sense of place and landscape and the importance of the land in Native American traditions across the country. So we were really thrilled to be able to show that. We also have a shared internship with Prax that's supported by a fund that was set up by Ed Ray in honor of his late wife. We're working out the parameters of that program right now. We're talking with the Corvallis Multicultural Literacy Center about holding events together and for them to hold programs in our building. Their building is tiny. They can only serve a certain number of people at one time, and letting them use our space would allow them to serve a much greater number of people. So we're discussing how and where that makes sense. Jackson Street Youth Services, similarly, they do not have a space large enough for all of their staff to meet together. So we have allowed them to use our space in that regard off and on for the last few years. we're discussing some other programming to do with them as well. We also partner with both the Corvallis and Philomath Chambers of Commerce. The Corvallis Chamber of Commerce, we allow other members of the chamber to utilize the space at the Corvallis Museum when they don't have a physical space large enough to host events like greeters and business after hours. The Philomath Chamber of Commerce, we actually let them install their visitor services information area inside of our museum. They don't have a physical space right now. And so it's really important to get that information out and have it available to the public. And it makes a lot of sense to put it in our building as one of the tourist destinations in Philomath. So let's talk about our growth a little bit. When I arrived in August of 2021, we had 3 full-time staff, supported by 5 part-time staff, operating 2 museums and a collection center. The 3 full-time staff were the executive director, the curator of exhibitions, and the curator of education, which is a new position that was added in late 2019 in the expectation of opening the Corvallis Museum in early 2020. Now we have 6 full-time staff supported by 3 part-time staff. So we added a director of development position and an operations manager, and we grew the curator of collections position to be full-time. It had not been prior to that. I wanted to show you how much our budget has grown. The best way I figured to do that with COVID mucking everything up was to show you our last fiscal year pre-pandemic. So that's what's on the screen for you. So our fiscal year runs July through June, as yours does. So 2018, 2019, operations budget of just under $500,000. Of that, payroll cost was just under $280,000, or around 61% of our budget. And we served just under 6,000 visitors that year at the Philomath Museum. For our current fiscal year, which of course isn't quite done yet, our operations budget is about $960,000. So that is a significant increase. Of that, payroll is about 59%. So we're holding fairly steady in terms of how much of our budget is payroll cost. So far this year, we have served over 14,000 visitors between our 3 buildings. Activities and programs. We host a number of field trips in both of our museums. At the Corvallis Museum, it's been really fun to see kids come in and engage with the artifacts on display. We host lectures. We have all sorts of other kids programs. We've revitalized our Museum Kids program for this summer, which will be a lot of fun. We've had a music series in late summer the last few years. At the Philomath, we have similar activities. This is a picture from Family Day a couple of years ago with the agility dogs. Of course, we've continued exhibits at the Philomath Museum. So we do art exhibits upstairs, history exhibits downstairs, a lot of field trips and kids programs. For the last few years, we have not done as much programming in Philomath due to the extensive road work happening out there. We just felt it was safer to not invite larger crowds of people, particularly kids, onto the property, but we're really looking forward to starting to schedule more out there beginning this fall again. We have also started doing guided tours of the Johnson's Collection Center on a quarterly basis. That has been great to allow the public more access to see a lot more of the things that we have that aren't on display. Looking forward, one of the most exciting projects we have coming up pretty quickly is the Philomath Museum Master Plan. We have spent quite a bit of time and money and energy over the years building the collection center, building the Corvallis Museum. It's really time that we look back at our home building and do better for it and better for the residents of Philomath and the rural parts of the county through what we do there. So we're working with an architect out of Portland, Peter Meijer. He specializes in reuse of historic structures. He also specializes in National Register listed buildings, which is great for us. We have grant funding, individual donations, and an anonymous match is going to help us raise the rest over the next couple of months. So we are looking forward to all of that. Part of what we're doing in that building is a significant look at the ADA issues at the building, which are big. We want to be able to serve every member of our community equally. So a big part of the plan will be that. We're also looking at how we can incorporate more different exhibition space into that building so we can have some permanent exhibitry telling the story of Philomath, the significant industries in the area, and more of the story of the rural parts of the county, which is lacking in our exhibits currently. We're also hoping to carve out a dedicated education space in that building, which we currently do not have. So when we have children's programs, any other visitor coming to the museum is going to encounter that program in one of the exhibit galleries. So it may not be that great of an experience for other visitors at the time. So as part of this project, we are holding 3 community conversations to invite the public in to share with us feedback, what we've done in the past, what they would like to see us do in the future, what's important to them about that building. Those are scheduled for June 15th at 2 p.m., June 19th at 10:30 a.m., and June 24th at 3 p.m. They'll all be at the Philomath Museum, and I would love to see some faces from this room attend and share with us your feedback as well. Looking further out, we're looking at what new exhibits to put into the Corvallis Museum. We need to do some significant DEAI work as an organization. We're looking at more programs at both museums, continuing to build those partnerships and more. We're also looking forward to continuing more community involvement. Currently, staff are involved with the following: the Historic Courthouse Advisory Committee, which did recently wrap up its work, the Fort Hoskins Interpretation Committee, the Downtown Corvallis Organization, the Benton County Cultural Coalition, the Adair Living History Group, the Oregon Museum Association, the Willamette Valley Museum Alliance, and a lot more than I didn't list there. So I have talked for a very long time. That is what I have to share with you all today. So if you have any questions, I would love to take those.
Not a question, more of a comment, but appreciate all the effort that went into the new Corvallis Museum and sharing space with other, I guess, nonprofits that need meeting space. So I think that I'm a big fan of, if you have something, use it as much as you can, and this fits right into that. So I appreciate the community-minded and looking outside your immediate area for other organizations that you can support.
Thank you.
I did think of a question. So back when I got to tour the museum and the Johnson Center back in, I think, like 2018, I remember seeing a bunch of volunteers and folks categorizing, and I think maybe it was the hoarder collection. And they would, I mean, 60,000 artifacts, going through each one and cataloging it. Just a huge undertaking. Has that effort been completed, or are you still chipping away at it?
Still chipping away. Yeah, I will say the bulk of it's been done. We did have a change of staff in our curator of collection position about a year ago. So Patty has a different way of addressing things than Mary had in the past. And she's prioritizing, not that it wasn't a priority before, but we've kind of reshifted how we do the work out there so we can work our way through those last few pallets that are still wrapped up out there from that move.
Very good. Thank you.
And of course, we're constantly collecting and constantly dealing with new things coming in as well. So it's always fun to see what's coming in, but it's easy if we're not careful to get overloaded out there. But the volunteers you mentioned are instrumental in taking care of all of that.
So that leads to another question. It sounds like you're continuing to collect artifacts that represent the history of Benton County. So how do you handle that? Do people just come and randomly try to give you things, or do you try to encourage them to meet with you first?
There's a few different ways that happens. Sometimes people just show up at our door and try to drop stuff off, which we really discourage them from doing. Because if we don't want it and they never come back for it, that gets into a whole host of issues and abandoned property laws and. We have a very specific collections management policy that dictates what we can take and when and why. And in essence, you hit it on the head. We collect things related to Benton County's history. Occasionally, we will collect things that relate broader to Oregon, that are related to a story that had significant impact in Benton County if it helps us tell that story. But the very first question we ask every donor is, how is this related to Benton County? And if it's not, then 99% of the time, that item is not considered any further. For Patty, the process that Patty, our current curator of collections, likes to follow is she encourages people to send in photographs of the items. And then we have a collections committee that meets on a monthly basis, made up of board members, highly informed members of the community who can be really helpful in helping us make decisions, and a few staff members. They consider those things versus the parameters in our management policy. And then they get back to the donors, and then they're physically brought in and processed from there. Outside of things that are related to Benton County, then the next few things that we look at are duplication in the collection. If we already have 17 of something, we're probably going to say no to the 18th. And then there's a host of other things that kind of fall after that, but I won't get into all the details right now. But it is always fun to see what is offered to us too.
I would imagine. And my other question is that, as you know, we have extensive historic properties that Benton County owns and manages at our various natural areas and parks. And we don't have at this point a historic resource plan. So I would welcome conversation as we move forward with the Historical Society as to how the county might best approach creating a plan to make sure that all of those historic resources have work to do, and we have enough funds to actually steward them so that they don't just become fire hazards. Addressing the fire people in the room. Yes.
We would love to help with that. So if you'll let me know which staff member to reach out to about that, I'd be happy to.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments on the Philomath Museum and trying to figure out how it fits into the museum's structures. And that reminds me, I was at a floodplain mapping meeting in Kings Valley, and the Corps of Engineers person stated that the Lucky Mute River is very well behaved. It tends to stay in its channel, which surprised them. Well, why is this? And 100 or maybe 100 and some years ago, logging used to build a temporary dam, log dam on the river, float, get all the logs that were headed to market, and then I think with a little dynamite, blow up the temporary dam. And this wall of water and logs would just ream out the channel. And the reason I'm bringing that up is I'd love to have a picture or two of that operation to show the people that are involved in the floodplain to, well, maybe this is why the Lucky Mute is so well behaved in the 21st century, because early in the 20th, this was, I think, a fairly common practice.
I will look around and see if we have any pictures.
Splash damming. Yeah. And there are at least a couple of master's theses that have been written at Oregon State University about splash damming and the extent of it. And I think there are some great photos in the collection, the archives at Oregon State University.
Yeah.
But yes, that's a good point. History matters.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Jessica, very much. We really appreciate the update. And we, as some people may know, some people may not, the county does contribute to the funding for the Benton County Historical Society. And that is somewhat of a historical element itself. Once upon a time, prior to Measure 5, the Benton County Historical Society had its own levy. And once the tax system in the state of Oregon changed, all of those little levies that were levied, taxes that were levied by other entities got folded into the county's base rate. So at that time, the county commissioners said that they would continue to honor the commitment to help fund the Benton County Historical Society. So each budget cycle for our biennial budget, we do consider a contribution to the Benton County Historical Society. And at this point in time, that comes out of our economic development budget. So we very much appreciate the relationship and hope to make sure that it is a vital one that serves everyone in Benton County. So thank you.
We very much appreciate that support from the county. And I was going to offer, as you are a significant funder of ours, to come back every 6 months and give you guys an update. They would be shorter in the future since I wouldn't run over the history of the organization every time.
It sounds good.
Great, great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Oregon Department of Forestry annual update with Michael Curran and Leo Williamson from the Philomath District. Well, that's not what it's called. We call it the Philomath District of the Oregon Department of Forestry.
Okay, can folks hear me okay? Okay. Well, good morning, Chair Ogerow, other commissioners and county staff. For the record, my name's Michael Kern. I'm the district forester for the West Oregon District locally. So I'll let Leo introduce himself.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Leo Williamson, Protection Unit Forester for ODF out of the Philomath unit.
Okay, so thank you all for letting us come do our annual update again, as we do every spring. Kind of the goal of today, we'll kind of talk through some local updates across all the programs that we implement within the West Oregon District and the Oregon Department of Forestry. And then if time allows, we'll get into some bigger topics statewide if there's an interest. So with that, hopefully you all have an updated org chart from us. I'm hoping that was included in the packet. So seems like the last few years when we've been coming, we've been talking about significant staff turnover for us. And I'm actually happy to announce that this is our first year where we've had consistent staffing for more than a year, which is a good spot for us to be in. We've been dealing with a lot of retirements and folks with promotional opportunities since about 2020. And thankfully, we've been able to rebound and get everybody back in place. So we have consistent staffing, which is good to hear. So with that, I also just want to give some shout outs for some county staff that have been instrumental for us in just the mission that we do. First being Woods Patrol Deputy Jerry Williams and the patrolling that he does on our state forest lands and private timber lands as well, and helping us avoid any issues on forest land. And then also just our close interaction that we have with Emergency Manager Brian Lee. Both have been really great to work with over the years. I look forward to continuing to work with them in the future. And then also just want to give a shout out to Jonna V. Stokes and her staff for partnering with us on fire messaging. Kind of a pilot project we started last summer, or maybe 2 summers ago. And it's really been beneficial in helping us get prevention messaging out during fire season. So just a shout out to the county PIO staff for that. It's been super helpful for us. So moving on, starting to talk through some of our programs. So we'll start with the fire protection side of the business. So just as a reminder, we protect a little under 1.1 million acres of private forest land and some public loan land within Benton, Polk, Lincoln, and the southern half of Yamhill County. So looking at kind of a fire season update from last summer, we burned about 56 acres, which is less than our 10-year average, which is good. But we did end up with a longer fire season of about 123 days, and our 10-year average is around 110. And then we also did end up with about 21 more statistical fires that we had to take action on, which is much higher than our 10-year average. So, and with that, just our main 3 causes of fires that we ultimately deal with are tied around equipment use, debris burning, and recreation. So, and now I'll kind of kick it over to Leo to talk about Benton County specific fires that we dealt with.
Yep, so covering some of the fires specific to Benton County, I'd categorize our initial attack activity last summer as moderate. We had a total of 18 stat fires, and some of those have come in a little bit after the season, just picking up some of these shoulder season events that we've had lately. with causes related mostly to the ones Michael just mentioned. So equipment used to burning and recreation. Of note, though, we had the August 25th lightning event, which hit the district. What was different about that lightning event for us is that traditionally those come with a decent amount of rain, but we did not receive that last summer. So we got what we call a dry lightning event, which resulted in a busy couple of days for us within Benton County in particular. From that event, we had 7 fires within the county, a few of note, one of them being the South Mountain Fire in the LC area, which burned about 11.5 acres in some pretty steep ground, which is definitely a challenge for our firefighters. And then assisted on a fire on the U.S. Forest Service in the Corvallis watershed. We contributed some overhead and resources to help suppress that fire, as well as the remaining 5, which definitely, like I said, kept us pretty busy for a couple of days there. Just wanted to kind of shout out the partnerships with the fire departments within Benton County and the Fire Defense Board, as well as our logging operator community for all the help in suppressing those fires, as well as the rest of the ODF organization helping us out when we needed it. So in summary, for fire season 2023, we had 25.24 acres burned on ODF protected lands, 89 acres of mutual aid assistance for a total of 114 acres to date within Benton County.
Yep. And really just want to highlight that that lightning event that Leo mentioned. I would say that's a historical event for our district. We really have not dealt with the magnitude of that just with the sheer number of fires that we had from that lightning event. In conversations I've had with folks that can go back to the 60s and 70s, they can't think of a time that they can remember that we had an event like that. So really, I think that's just a shout out to our staff locally and the commitment they have to our mission, and just the really good partnerships we have with the rural fire departments. And really the landowner and operator community were essential for us to be able to keep those fires at bay the way we did. So really just want to highlight efforts by everybody during that event. So moving on to this fire season, that's generally one of the main questions I get this time of year. What's fire season going to be like in the upcoming summer? So looking at the 2024 fire season prediction, kind of underwhelming, to be honest with you. Everything just says it's going to be average, which is really tough to kind of plan for, right? Because you really don't know what average is going to end up like. One thing I would say is May and June ultimately dictate what fire season will be like for us. Last year it showed May and June, the faucet turned off, we didn't get any moisture, and we had a busy fire season. This year, April proved to be very dry for us, but then the faucet turned back on in May to where we rebounded with enough moisture to where all signs are looking good for us. So we'll see what June brings. But at the end of the day, I like to tell folks August will still be here. It's going to be hot. It's going to be dry. Fire season will be here, even if it does start a little bit later. So we're fully prepared and ready. And when the time comes, we'll call fire season, and our folks will be up to the challenge and ready to respond to the calls. So I'll go ahead and let Leo give an update on our community wildfire program with the current grants and the CWPP update that we interact with.
Yeah, so we continue to have a number of active grants within the West Oregon District, working with private landowners to accomplish fuels reduction and defensible space. Just at the end of May, we closed out the only current active grant within Benton County, and that was our Monroe Fishback Grant. That resulted in a total of 72 projects for 187.5 acres of treated land, with just about half of those residing within Benton County. We did just recently pick up what we're calling the Small Forest Land Grant. That's a grant opportunity through ODF, and that is just kind of spooling up as we speak now. So that grant is going to have about $200,000 in contractual towards fuels reduction and defensible space in established fire waste communities. So we're focusing on areas that have received treatment prior, but are looking for some help to maintain those treatments and continue the good work that they'd previously, signed up to do before. Additionally, we're in the early stages of working to secure an additional grant through the Western States Fire Managers for the ALSE area. So more to come on that as we move through the application process. But we recognize the hunger for continued fuels reduction within Benton County. And it certainly is a priority of mine to continue to seek funding for that. And hopefully that we're successful in continuing that within the county.
Just one last update on the protection side of the shop. So we usually talk to you all about what the Benton County Forest Land Classification Committee is up to. So if you all remember, that's a county appointed committee that works with ODF to ultimately determine what lands get classified as forest land, which will ultimately dictate who will be receiving wildland fire protection from ODF. So just some recent changes that we've had to interact with within the agency. So House Bill 4133 in the last legislative session was an effort by the legislature to look at different ways of funding wildland fire in the state of Oregon. In all, that bill did not pass in the short session. But what came from it was an effort to go underway between the Oregon Department of Forestry and the Oregon State Fire Marshal to really do a substantial overhaul of how fire is ultimately funded in the state of Oregon. So with that, we got a note from the governor's office to essentially put a pause on all forest land classification efforts statewide until this work group is done convening and coming up with a potential solution. What that means for Benton County ultimately is not really nothing. We've already gone through our classification efforts back in the late 2000s. And we've stayed up on our statutorily required 5-year review to where we're actually sitting in a really good place in Benton County. So the pause that we were given from the governor's office doesn't really have an impact for Benton County, which is a good thing. But moving forward, we won't be able to make any official decisions on classification until we get word from the governor's office that we can proceed forward again. So, and I believe we do have one committee member that will be up for reappointment. And we will continue to work with you all just to keep that committee current, because we'll still meet annually just to keep it fresh on everybody's minds until the pause is lifted. So we will be reaching out here sometime in the near future to try to get a reappointment done for one of the committee members that's interested in staying on, if you all would support that. So just a heads up on that. So unless there's any questions on the fire side, I'll go ahead and move on to state forest, if that's okay. Okay. So as a reminder for the state forest side of the business that we manage, so within Benton County, the forest trust lands acres that we manage are 8,327 acres. And those are any revenue from those lands. 2/3 of the revenue goes to the county and local taxing districts. And then we also manage 553 common school fund land acres within Benton County, and any revenues from that go straight to the school fund, statewide school fund. So, so just kind of a revenue update for you within Benton County. So within the current fiscal year, so FY24 revenue to date that we've been able to provide to the county and local taxing districts has been $216,249. FY23 revenue for last year, we were able to provide $661,804 to the county and local taxing districts. And then kind of a look forward, we're currently in our FY25 annual operations planning process. So looking ahead for next fiscal year, we're planning on having 2 sales within Benton County with an estimated $829,000 to the county and local taxing districts. And just a reminder for you all, that money that's supposed to come in doesn't come in that same fiscal year. We have 2-year timber sale contracts whenever we sell a timber sale. So that $829,000 will come over, or will come into the county over a span of 2, potentially 3 years, depending on how long it takes to ultimately complete that timber sale. So, and then moving forward, we've been talking about the habitat conservation plan, and trying to give annual updates on that, just so you all are up to speed on what's going on there. So in our March Board of Forestry meeting, we finally got the go ahead from the Board of Forestry to continue with the current habitat conservation plan permit process that we're working through as is, so with no changes. And with that, the agency went into putting together new modeling info. So the counties kind of had an idea of what to expect under an HCP as far as how many timber sales we'll still be able to put forth. Specifically for Benton County, on average, we'd be doing about 3 million board feet annually with an estimated $800,000 to $1 million in revenue. What that means from current business is really no change. The HCP kind of keeps business status quo for the West Oregon district. Our volume and the amount of timber sales we put out shouldn't really change much, which is not necessarily the case for other counties, but for within West Oregon, we shouldn't see much change. And with that volume, essentially what that means is 1 to 2 timber sales a year that we'll be able to put out in Benton County. So you shouldn't see much impact to Benton County specifically when it comes to the HCP. Some higher level impacts just on our forest development fund. So that's where any other revenue that ODF collects from the timber sales, that's what sits and funds state forest operations. We are looking at about 45 million board feet less harvest on average, which is fairly significant when looking at the big picture. So with that, the agency is currently working through financial strategies to save costs and work on an organizational review on what ultimate organization we need to manage under an HCP. And just kind of an update on where we are with it. We're continuing to work with the federal services, so U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and NOAA Fisheries, to get our incidental take permits now that we've got the final direction from the board and the modeling's completed. And with that, as they work through the remainder, we're looking at getting the incidental take permits, which is what we ultimately need to manage under an HCP, in March of 2025 to March of 2026. Hopefully here in a few months, we'll be able to know more of a fine-tuned date. But right now, that's kind of the time frame we've got to get it. And then once our incidental take permits are received, we ultimately will need to complete a new forest management plan, which we're working on behind the scenes already. And that's expected to get completed. So starting in FY27 or FY28, we'll be working under the new forest management plan and going from there. So any questions state forest wise? Or move on to forest resources?
Before you have those formal incidental take permits under the HCP, is that going to slow down some of the harvest?
Nope. So as it sits right now, we're kind of working under two plans per se. So we're still working under our current forest management plan and trying to follow the HCP guidelines as well. So we actually are working under a little more restrictions currently, but so I think as far as volume output that we're putting out now is going to be fairly similar to what you're going to see under the HCP. So we are still technically working under our current forest management plan, but still trying to follow the intent of the HCP the best we can.
Thank you.
Okay. So unless there's any other questions, sorry.
I've got a couple questions and comments on the first part of your report, and appreciate you mentioning cooperation between your agency and Benton County. I've been working on this for a while because I know you folks have the information, and it in some ways goes out to a select group. The people that are working in the woods pay a lot of attention in July and August to what the restrictions are, conditions / restrictions, but that information needs to go to a wider audience, and Benton County definitely can be a partner in helping get the word out, especially when we get into extreme fire danger, and that everybody should know about that. So I hope that effort continues and expands. I appreciate you mentioning the lightning event last year, because I've lived in the Kings Valley area for more than 45 years, and I describe our summer weather as kind of boring. That we don't have thunderstorms and like they do in the Cascades or Eastern Oregon, and that from my perspective, that was very unusual, and appreciate the quick response. And we had a lightning strike just west of us, and it was out before I noticed that there was a fire. So you guys got up early that morning. Appreciate that. And it was like a 4-acre. I was kind of confused seeing a burn spot, and I don't think in August they do much prescribed burning, and so I finally figured out what went on. But and you mentioned about grants, and I'm glad you have the community wildfire forester position filled. I think that fits in with getting information out and what encouraging people to figure out what defensible space means around their houses and structures. So I hope that is the funding on that position pretty solid for next year or two, or how does that look?
Yep. So yeah, for the next 2 or 3 years, we're sitting pretty solid with funding. One of the nuances we're starting to work through, and I think time will kind of tell where we end up. But if there was it was Senate Bill 762 back after the Labor Day 2020 fires, really landmark bill that provided a lot of additional funding for both ODF and the Oregon State Fire Marshal to increase capacity and other programs for fire prevention. But there was a piece in there to create a 20-year strategy. And the ultimate goal of that was to come up with high priority areas where the most fire risk is, and focus all the funding in those areas for fire prevention purposes. So fuels reduction, defensible space, things like that. And that plan finally got finalized last fall. And unfortunately, I mean, obviously the high risk areas, right? Southwest Oregon, Eastern Oregon, kind of that Cascade Crest area. Those are going to be the priority areas for the 20-year strategy, which is hard to argue with. But one of the pieces that's missing out of there is trying to still prioritize funding for Northwest Oregon. So that's one of the nuances we need to work through, because that's really going to be the guiding document when it comes to future grant priority areas, is looking at that 20-year strategy. So like I said, it's tough to argue where the priorities are, but I think time will tell. We don't know what ultimate impacts there will be for Northwest Oregon. Probably at least for another couple of years as we get used to working through the 20-year strategy and having that kind of be our guiding document. The one thing I can promise you is we're still going to work very hard locally. We're still going to be putting in grant applications for fuels reduction projects, defensible space. That's not going to go away, but I think time will kind of tell to see what ultimate impact that 20-year strategy has locally within Northwest Oregon.
And I would appreciate you mentioned legislation that started in this year's short session, and keep us in the loop and let us know how we can help with that effort. Because it's kind of long overdue, and it's a big heavy lift to look. We want to drastically change or how wildland firefighting is funded.
Yeah, and I could just kind of give a quick high-level update on that because that was part of my statewide update. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, Commissioner Malone. At the end of the day, the cost of wildland fire is going up exponentially year after year, especially since about 2019, to where it's really becoming unaffordable for east side landowners and even some west side landowners as you work further south. Not that it's not becoming unaffordable up in kind of the northwest part of the state, because costs have risen exponentially, and the rate per acre that landowners pay up here has gone up quite a bit too. So I think the legislature understands and the governor's office understands the issues and concerns that the landowners are dealing with when it comes to the cost of fire protection. So I'm hoping that this work group formed between OSFM and ODF will yield good results. And we can kind of overhaul the system and really make it more equitable across the board for everybody. So yes, that will continue to be a big topic, and really just to highlight the importance, on the fire side of the shop, it's becoming such, a big spotlight's being put on it more and more every summer now, to where the agency realized that. So Cal Mukamoto, our state forester, actually created a new deputy director position that oversees fire protection. So we just have essentially a dedicated person to interact more with the external partners that we work with. And his name is actually Kyle Williams. He got into place in the month of April. Used to work for OFIC and is actually a former ODF employee that worked at the district locally a while ago. So super excited to get him on board, but just to kind of show how important this topic is, we do have a new deputy director in place to kind of help us with this effort, and really just the fire scene in general moving forward. So.
All right, thank you. And that reminded me that Senator Wyden is working on this issue on the national level and trying, I think the gist of what he's trying to accomplish is instead of having wildfires, surprise, and that try to handle it with traditional funding that put wildfires in the same category as hurricanes and other natural disasters, and that the federal government can bring significant resources to large wildfire events. So hopefully that'll continue to slowly move forward.
Yep, that'll be good. So, and then also I know we've got OSFM here to give an update. I do just want to give a quick update on the forest resources side of our business. So the administration of the Oregon Forest Practices Act. I'll go ahead and let Leo provide the update for that locally, but just real quick, as you all recall from the last couple of years, as we've been talking, the Private Forest Accord is really the biggest overhaul we've seen to the Oregon Forest Practices Act since really its inception in the 1970s. And that was an effort from the environmental groups and timber industry really coming together to work together on kind of agreed upon changes to the Oregon Forest Practices Act, because there was competing legislation and litigation that was out there that was proven costly for both sides. So Governor Brown at the time brought the two groups together to try to come up with changes that they all can agree upon. And what came from that was the Private Forest Accord, which we finally fully implemented as of July 1 of 23, which has been a big learning curve for both us internally and the landowner operator community. So there's been a big emphasis put on trainings for both internal and external partners, which has been successful so far. And we'll still continue to work over the next year to really just getting fully comfortable with the new rule set. But I would say, at least locally, it seems to be fairly successful as our staff work with the forest landowner community, both large and small. So, and then I'll hand it over to Leo just for some quick updates.
Yep, just a few quick numbers. So for 2023, we had 558 notifications filed. So when a landowner is planning to do any kind of management activity on their land, they're required to file a notification. So that's how we track the number of folks operating in the woods. So again, that was 558 for 2023, and that's up from 476 in 2022. And I think a lot of that has to do with that Private Forest Accord implementation process. There were certain timelines last year that landowners and operators could get their paperwork in to kind of fall under the previous rule set. It just gave them more time to kind of get their organizations ready along with ours. It's a big learning curve for everybody. But again, like Michael said, been really proud of the foresters that work for me in, prioritizing education for landowners and operators and getting everybody up to speed and bringing them along for the ride. Additionally, we continue to stay busy with federal incentive programs through Natural Resource Conservation Service and the Farm Services Agency. So sort of similar to our fuels reduction projects, that's looking at more kind of the restoration side of stuff within forest management. And then just recently from the ice storm earlier this year, the Farm Services Agency approved an area that includes Benton County for emergency forest restoration program. So that landowners who had a certain threshold of damage on their property in timberland will be able to apply for some kind of assistance there. That goes through the Farm Services Agency, but the Stewardship Foresters and ODF do provide technical assistance in that area. So again, continue to stay busy with those programs.
Yep. And just one last quick thing. I do just want to say thank you for Michelle Collins and Tammy Tracy with the county's assessor's office. Leo and I and our stewardship foresters have been working closely with them to just make sure we're on the same page when it comes to the forest deferral process on forest landowners' property taxes. There's kind of an intersection there for the work we do on the notification side and the Forest Practices Act, and ultimately what comes on the back end of that on whether or not they still get forest deferral or not on their property taxes. And really the end goal there was just make sure we continue to be on the same page, and that the message we're sharing with landowners is the same message that they're sharing. And they've been really good to work with, and just making sure we're on the same page. So just want to give them a shout out and a thank you for the time spent with us on that. So, and I think that's it for us, unless there's questions.
Commissioner Wise?
Yes, well, thanks for highlighting our staff, and we'll definitely pass that along. And then I wanted to highlight too, so going back to the lightning strikes, we did hear from several of our forestry partners, landowners, et cetera. We heard several positive feedback about Leo, about how helpful he was and the great work that he did. So I just wanted to say thank you for doing a good job.
You're very welcome.
And I would just say that you all are dealing with a lot of changes all at once. And kudos that you are holding it all together. And that I'm really glad you have full staff to be able to do that. And it's really clear that you are working really well in partnership with all kinds of entities right now. And that's always very good to hear. So thank you. It's good for us to know who you're working with and what those collaborations are too. Really appreciate the update.
Yep, no, appreciate it. And as always, we're always available if you guys need something from us. And as we get closer to fire season here, we'll make sure we're communicating with you all as well, so you're tracking where we're at locally.
Yeah, I would also like to say that during fire season, I've very much appreciated getting the regular updates from you by email. They're always timely and helpful.
Okay. We'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Okay, next up is from the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office, Brent Griffiths, mobilization coordinator for our area. And Brent, do you have a colleague with you as well in the audience?
I do, yeah. Joining us is Stephanie Stafford. Red light is on. Yes, it is not intuitive. So yes, joining us is Stephanie Stafford. She's our community wildfire risk reduction specialist. I told her the meeting started at 10 o'clock. My mistake. So that's why she wasn't here when the meeting started. But yes, glad to have her. And I think she's here to answer any questions that may come up based on the information that we provide to you today. So,
thank you.
All right. Well, good morning again, commissioners. Again, Brent Griffiths. I'm with the Department of State Fire Marshal. And as has been mentioned, I'm assigned to Benton County as a regional mobilization coordinator. It's good to be with you again and to provide an update on how we can provide support within the county if requested. Most of the information I have has been previously provided, but hopefully you'll find it a good refresher as we go into fire season. I want to first highlight the great partnership that we have with Benton County fire agencies and local ODF units. Our office is a regular participant of the monthly Benton County Fire Defense Board meeting, along with other county and state partners, including the Sheriff's Office, dispatch, county emergency management staff, and ODF. I, along with my counterpart to the north, were invited to and recently attended ODF's Northwest Area Fire Season Preparedness Meeting. These opportunities foster relationships and trust that can be leveraged during an emergency. Seeing a familiar face and understanding roles at an incident makes working together much easier and hopefully leads to a much quicker resolution. So we appreciate those partnerships. Benton County fire agencies are well-trained and well-equipped to respond to any incident for which they are called. In fact, we have tapped into those skills and equipment and have asked them numerous times to provide assistance to fire departments or districts outside of the county or their region. Last year, Benton County resources were asked to respond to 3 separate significant events, all wildfires that threatened homes and communities across the state. Their work helped to mitigate those incidents to the point that they could be returned back to a local response. And again, we at the state value that partnership and appreciate that we can ask Benton County resources to respond and know that they'll provide a good product. Just as Benton County stands ready to provide assistance outside of their region, we continue to stand ready to provide assistance to Benton County in the event an incident exceeds their capacity and that of their mutual aid partners' capacity. Investments in the Oregon Fire Service made by the Oregon Legislature allows our office to provide support in a variety of ways. Under what we call immediate response, we are able to mobilize resources from surrounding counties to an emerging incident. These resources will work directly for the department having jurisdiction and can be assigned for up to 72 hours. The intent with immediate response is to keep an incident small and minimize the impact on local communities. And ultimately, if we can keep that from becoming a conflagration, it's money well spent, because once it gets to a conflagration, that can get very, very expensive quickly. Also under immediate response, we continue to be able to provide air support to local fire agencies. This is done in collaboration with our great partners at ODF and is intended to be used for an incident that is threatening lives or structures, but is not threatening lands protected by ODF. So if we order aircraft for a local fire department, again, through ODF, if one is available, those costs are covered by us, again, with the thought that it is money well spent if aircraft is the appropriate tool to keep a fire small and away from communities. A perfect example of this was a fast-moving field fire on the east side of Corvallis last July 4th. I don't know if you're familiar with that incident or not. It was Colorado Lake Fire. But due to a very real and significant threat to a large subdivision, it prompted a request for both air and ground resources from our office. We were able to mobilize those resources, and they were on their way, but thankfully they were ultimately not required due to a rapid but welcome change in weather and fire behavior. We still have the ability to pre-position resources when data suggests that there is a high likelihood an event could quickly overwhelm local resources. Strategically locating these resources in a response-ready status allows for rapid deployment if the need arises. And then if the incident or if an incident requires multiple operational periods, or it appears that it's not something that's going to be mitigated quickly, the county, through the Fire Defense Board Chief, is able to request a conflagration. If approved by the governor, OSFM is able to mobilize an incident management team along with the necessary resources to the incident. If such an incident threatens structures outside of a fire district or department boundary, again, we would work with the board on the appropriate delegation of authority. I've discussed this in previous presentations, but I believe there's a sample delegation of authority and an informational document in your board packet. So I would also like to highlight that many Benton County fire agencies applied for and received our wildfire season staffing grant. This grant is prioritized for agencies with an operating budget of $2 million or less and provides $35,000 to bring seasonal staff on during fire season. So these personnel supplement existing staff, or in some cases provide the only available staff to quickly respond to an incident, again, with the intent and hope to keep a fire small and out of communities. In addition to the staffing grant, 2 Benton County agencies were awarded fire apparatus to increase local response capacity. I highlighted this last year, but Monroe Rural Fire Protection District was awarded a Type 3 heavy brush truck, and it is in service as of a few weeks ago. So good to see that in the system. Corvallis Fire Department was awarded a water tender, and delivery of that is expected or anticipated in the next couple of months. So, and this was made possible through Senate Bill 762, which has been mentioned already by previous speakers. But again, that passed in that 2021 legislative session. And these awards, the awards of the engines to Monroe and to Corvallis were part of 76 total awards of wildland firefighting apparatus spread across the state. Beyond the assistance we're able to provide, Benton County fire agencies are doing great work internally and with regional partners related to preparedness and response capabilities. Unfortunately, the Benton County Fire Defense Board chief, who is Chief Ben Janes with Corvallis Fire Department, nor any of his alternates were able to make it today, but they have asked me to read a letter on their behalf. But before I do that, any questions on any of the information I've provided so far?
Had a question back to the August 23rd lightning strike. That we got a report how that affected Benton County, but I don't think it was confined to the Benton County boundaries. What was the? I remember something about up and down the Coast Range, but what was the effect in other parts of Western Oregon?
Yeah, it had a pretty big effect certainly in my area. My area includes Douglas, Lane, Lynn, and Benton counties. So both Douglas and Lane were hit pretty significantly. But then I think that system kind of moved to the west, and that's where it impacted Benton County. I was certainly busy with multiple fires in my region. Douglas County ended up with a complex of fires that led to a conflagration, and also the deployment of an ODF incident management team. So it was the Tyee Ridge complex, just west of Sutherland. Because Benton County is my area, and I'm responsible for tracking what's happening in my area, had multiple conversations with Leo about what he was working on here and the potential threat to structures. And luckily, because of the great work that they did, that threat never materialized. But it certainly was a storm that impacted a large majority of the state, from the California border up north here on the west side of the Cascades. So.
Well, part of the reason for my interest is just you do your best to get ready and have at least a modest amount of resources, but something like that event, the lightning event, I can see kind of overwhelming what we have in place to fight the fires. And hopefully, lesson learned and where to have resources, and because that was unusual, but we're having more unusual weather events, and so it's concerning.
Yes, agreed. We are having more unusual weather events, and that's certainly, even though we saw that storm, forecasted and predicted, really unusual that it traveled as far north as it did, and stayed as far west as it did. I think, as you mentioned, Commissioner Malone, it's not very common for you to experience in Kings Valley thunderstorms and lightning. So that was certainly an unusual event.
Especially with no moisture.
No moisture, correct. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so to read the letter from the Benton County Fire Defense Board to the commissioners, greetings, and this is from Chief Ben James, again, the Benton County Fire Defense Board Chief. Greetings, commissioners. I'm sorry I couldn't give you this message in person. I'm currently out of town and unable to attend, as are both alternates to the Fire Defense Board. I wanted to provide you with a brief update on behalf of the Benton County Fire Defense Board as we head into the 2024 wildfire season. A lot of good work is being done in the many different fire departments and fire districts in Benton County to make our community safer. Of course, there's a lot of work ahead of us, but we are taking steps every day to improve the safety of those we serve and our service. Here are a few steps we have taken to make the community safer and improve our service. Conducting annual evacuation exercises and webinars, conducting tabletop exercises with public safety partners, which one is planned for this Thursday, June 6th. Expanded mutual aid agreements with surrounding counties. An agreement has been signed with Lynn and Benton counties, also with Benton, between Benton and Lynn County. A mutual aid agreement is signed between Benton and Lincoln County, and working on Benton and Polk and a Benton and Lane mutual aid agreement. Also upstaffing during red flag days whenever possible. Applying for staffing, fuels reduction, and apparatus grants through the Office of the Oregon State Fire Marshal. Smaller Benton County agencies have received funding for additional staffing for fire for the 2024 fire season. Corvallis Fire was awarded and received multiple fuels reduction grants through OSFM. Corvallis Fire was awarded and is awaiting a new Type 6 wildland engine from OSFM in the latter part of fire season. And my apologies, I think in my presentation, I said that they were getting a tender, but they're getting a Type 6. That's a small brush truck, or a light brush truck, not a small, but a light brush truck. And then Monroe Fire, as has been mentioned, has placed in service a new Type 3 wildland engine from OSFM. The Benton County Fire Defense Board is working with OSFM on conflagration responses and immediate response deployments in and out of Benton County. They are purchasing cutting-edge software for evacuations and notifications, and that work is being done by the City of Corvallis and the Corvallis Fire Department. And a partnership between Benton County and the Corvallis Rural Fire Protection District for a new Oak Creek evacuation route. So as you can see, we are working hard to improve safety. We have a way to go, but are committed to the task. Again, that's from Ben James. That is what I have for you.
Thank you. Again, there's a lot going on, and appreciate the great degree of collaboration and the annual update. It's very welcome. So thank you very much.
Glad to do it.
Okay. With that, I'd like to call for a 5-minute break, and then we will return to our meeting with our facilities update from Rick Krieger and I believe Paul Walsinger. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, we are back from our break, and I see that Rick Krager and Paul Walsinger are in their places. And so I will ask you two gentlemen to take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner Oduro, members of the board. Again, great to be here this morning to provide you a facilities update. First, I'll apologize on behalf of Gary Stallcoff. He wasn't able to make it, a little bit of, I think, travel issues coming back to Oregon from a trip. And so Paul and I will do our best to represent him here today and provide you an update. So next thing I want to just mention is this is our hope is to be an ongoing agenda item for you. Obviously, we've been talking about a lot of capital projects over the last 2 and 3 years, and we are at a place within our process where we're, again, moving forward. Knock on wood, obviously, we want to continue the momentum that we have started, but I think we're in a really good place to now really be very transparent in the projects that we have. All the budgets are in pretty good shape for the most part. And again, Paul's been involved in most of all of these in some way or another, and we're moving at various stages. So we want to keep you and the community very informed on what's going on. So this is a work in progress. Obviously, we wanted to start somewhere in terms of some monthly type updates. I want to personally thank Paul for his efforts on this, as well as Lindsay Goodman, who came together pretty quickly to try and put some form of template in place so that we can, again, continue to improve on. So first I will start, and I'm just working from your packet on page 19. And we wanted to provide you kind of an outlay of what we're looking at when we talk all facilities. And so I really, Paul and I were just chatting here a little bit, really like this map here to kind of just give you an idea of everything that we have right now. Obviously, the things that are in white are those areas that we can, everything we own, but obviously the things that are not at least in any kind of new construction type process. The ones that are in pink are the ones that we're going to be highlighting here for you. Obviously, we've got, as I always like to say, Paul's always busy in every one of those facilities in a different way in terms of some form of projects. We're not going to go through all those. I'm sure he'd be delighted to talk about all of that, but we're going to really focus on the big ones here today. So if I can get my clicker here to work. Oh, okay. That might work. All right. We'll work it that way. So again, each of these are, we tried to follow the same pattern to give you sort of just a snapshot of some of the things that are happening. We'll start with the courthouse. I think, as everybody knows, we are at 100% design on this. So that was a process in itself over the course of since last summer, and in February 2024, we were able to get to 100% design. The next part of the process was really to get us to construction drawings. And that's what we've been working on since February. We are waiting at any time now to kind of get to that final piece to where we can move towards actually moving dirt, as they like to say, and starting to begin the work out at the new site. So again, this is moving along nicely now. There's still obviously a few little things that we're watching closely. Happy to say that, the land acquisition component is pretty much wrapped up and moving forward. And there shouldn't be any further issues related to that. There is, as I think most of you know, a historic building that is on the site that has proven to be a bit of a challenge as we continue to work through that and work with our state partners. There is a meeting this Monday in relation to some responses to the state and how that would be addressed. But clearly, we can't move forward on any kind of permitting work until, or I should say, getting our permits until that is resolved. So that's something we're watching very closely, and that could certainly be an issue as we move forward into the project. But in terms of delay, our intent is still to break ground here in June. That's the goal. But again, this is we're waiting on getting all of our permits completed on that. I am happy to say that I know the budget has been a conversation I've had personally with all of you for some time. We are at a good place with our budget. We are still, I know many of you are waiting on what the final estimate's going to be. We've been monitoring this very closely. I'm happy to say that we're still within the budget that we had established. There has been some things that we've had to look at to try to reduce in terms of scope to be able to stay within that. But we're all very confident that that can continue to be in line with the budget that we have established. The revenue side of this has also been its own adventure, as Vance well knows, in terms of getting through our various agreements. We're delighted to finally get our master agreement done with the state. That sort of locks in the entire project, but there's still yet another element of that, which is called the funding agreement that actually gets the dollars moving. We are still waiting on the state to provide us some comments in relation to the draft, but hopeful we'll see, somewhere, I would say midsummer, that at least that's the idea, that we could start to get that in place. At this point, it hasn't been a cash flow issue because obviously we issued our bonds last June and we have the resources to be able to front cost, but eventually we want our dollars back in terms of reimbursement as it relates to the state cost. So that's really important. Schedule wise, as you'll see on here, we are still targeted for sorry about the not lining very well here. I'll get back. Maybe just a little bit so they can see the chart here. So this is just kind of our Gantt chart in relation to managing the project going forward. As you can see, we're moving into that stage of the orange line there. That will really be the construction phase, and still aligned for the spring of 2026 is when the idea of this would be coming online. So I'll pause for a minute to see if there's any questions in relation to the courthouse and where we stand at this point, or I can wait until the end. Chair Ojiro, whatever you prefer.
Commissioner Malone.
Just a quick comment. We've been talking about this project for a while, and I think we ought to have at least one celebration of groundbreaking and to let the community know that we're moving forward on this project, and we have a timeline, and finances look like we're in good shape, and we're rolling. And I think we need to get the word out, and just I know how much work has gone into getting us to this point, and I think that we ought to have some celebration and thanking people that have got us to this point.
I absolutely concur. I will certainly be talking to Gary as well as our communication staff on how we can coordinate that. I think the big thing I would put out there is let's get that construction portion kind of up the plan in place. I think that would be the good timing. I think we're really close in terms of getting those final construction plans put together and getting through permitting. I think that would be the place that we'd want to start, learning kind of from our example with the crisis center, where we had a bit of an opening and then we had the permitting that got a little bit that slowed us up. It might be just good to be able to celebrate and then actually show we're moving things forward. Would be my suggestion.
Well, and I think of the May vote of last year, and I think a significant part of our community thinks that because the bond failed, that we're not moving forward with any of our projects, and that isn't true.
This has certainly been, obviously $86.8 million project is nothing to, it's certainly a large undertaking, and it's been a lot of time and effort, but I think we're, again, at a good place where it's going to be a building I think the community can be very proud of.
And that this is the largest construction project in Benton County history.
Sir.
And it's not the only one we have going.
Okay. If there's no other questions, I'll move to project number 2, which is our Emergency Operations Center. And again, as you all know, this is on the same site in relation to the courthouse. So what we provided for you here is just a bit of a picture, so you can kind of get a sense of the campus and how it's all coming together and where the location is. in the little circled area. This project, I think you all have been obviously very familiar with, where we were successful during the last state legislative, and I should say the last one, actually the 2023 legislative session, in securing some lottery-backed bonds. That was sort of the final resources that we needed to be able to see this project forward. I think what to call out here is there's been a lot of conversations around the design of this. I think initially, when we talked to all of you in the fall, we landed on a building that really could meet our needs around 7,000 square foot. The sheriff felt very satisfied. That obviously like to have more, but certainly 7,000 square foot was kind of the target that we modeled. We did have a little trouble with that initially based on some of the design and the way it was come together, but we, with the team's effort, really come together to find a different type of steel construction type design that brought us within budget. So I'm happy to say we're at 7,000 square foot, and it's all within budget again. This project will really pretty much align with the courthouse. That's one of the nice things, is that Hoffman will be the general contractor on this as well. So you can have a lot of efficiencies that you can achieve in having them out there, particularly around the site development, being able to do all the work at the same time. So this will fall within the same schedule, of course, as the courthouse. So when you see the Gantt chart, you will see that it aligns pretty closely with that, and we would expect the spring of 2026 with the Emergency Operations Center as well. Nice little picture here. Again, this is the creative juices that have been flowing. It's always fun for someone like me, a financial person, to get in with all these designers and see how they come and make their magic. And it's been really kind of a great process, and I think a good partnership with the Sheriff's Office in trying to really, really meet those needs, identify closely. And I think, again, this building has a cool looking design, and I think it will be really, really nicely fitted there onto the campus.
I do want to make a quick comment on that one. I would have loved to have seen us use mass timber construction. It is the lower in greenhouse gas emissions, than using steel or a lot of concrete. But the amount we would have had to scale back in terms of the size of the building in order to achieve that would have compromised the functionality and the purpose of the Emergency Operations Center, in terms of how our team works. So it was a painful trade-off to see, frankly, but I'm very grateful that we have managed to achieve the 7,000 square feet that meets the needs of our folks.
And just to clarify, so that was considered, it just wasn't feasible.
That's what this written report says.
Okay, thank you. And then I just wanted to note one other thing. It says Sheriff's Department instead of Sheriff's Office. And I feel like I can just almost hear the sheriff sitting on the other side of his screen going, "It's an office, not a department." Yep, there he is.
The sheriff is always really good about knocking me across the head when I mess up. I'm sure he's gonna get me later, but I do apologize, Sheriff, for that oversight.
Question I have, you mentioned the kind of simultaneous completion dates of mid 2026. The EOC is a much simpler building. Is it possible that would be completed before the courthouse?
I don't, I might defer to Paul, more of the construction expert. Maybe he has an answer for you on that.
The dates were really forecasted by Hoffman Construction. So it's a matter of mobilization. So as they begin building on the courthouse, then being able to move that 300 or 400 yards across the parking lot, mobilized to start the other one. So I think that was the slowdown or their concern there.
Okay, thank you. And it is, and we're leaving it in Hoffman's hands, just how the schedule plays out.
At this point, yes.
Okay, thanks.
The only other things I would just mention from the standpoint of, again, budget, I'm happy to say that we're all aligned within budget at this point at $8.8 million. Again, as a reminder, $5 million of this is coming from lottery-backed bonds that have not been issued. I always like to just caution a little bit on those things. While this is an appropriation by the state legislature and it is in law, There have been times in the past where when you're dealing with bonds, particularly when we saw COVID, where suddenly lottery-backed bonds were canceled because of changes. Again, that was unusual circumstances, only time in my career that I've ever seen that happen, but it's always a possibility. And of course, I never count the dollars until I see them in the bank. But again, we have been in close contact with the Department of Administrative Service on this. They've already provided us a intent to issue the bonds with their declarations. And then I'll be working with Vance on what looks like a pretty standard agreement that they have in place. But of course, that's always a process that we'll go through, likely here in the fall, when they issue them in March of 2025. The other big, large portion of this, as you might recall, was ARPA dollars. This was sort of the gap filler that we needed, was with our American Rescue Plan Act dollars. And then we do have a federal grant that goes with that as well, that we have been focusing primarily on the design element of that, just to ensure that we don't create any too many complexities as it relates to some of the requirements with our federal resources. So I think it's been a good strategy. You can see there's, we're just in the very early spending stages of this, but again, I'm sure you'll see this getting a lot more. As you see more reports going forward, there'll be a lot more money spending as we go into the summertime. I think is there any questions on the EOC? Okay, we will shift over to the Crisis Center, and I'm probably going to turn this one more over to Paul. I'll just say, I guess, to tee it up a little bit, this has certainly been, kept keeping us on our toes in relation to the Crisis Center. It certainly is the most diverse funding that you'll see, where we've used 5 different types of resources to be able to bring this project together. The good news is it's been very highly supported, particularly legislative federal. It's a complete state and federally funded program. Our project. That's where the resources come from. So I'll turn it over to Paul to let you know what's happening right now with the Crisis Center.
Well, I'm extremely pleased today to finally report to the Board of Commissioners that we are completing site work. Most of the subgrade work has been completed. We had a very productive meeting on Friday with DEQ, our project environmental engineers, PBS Engineering, on the sort of remains of the vapor mitigation system and the last of the environmental processes for the site. It was a very productive meeting, and I see at this point no barriers to that moving forward. So with that, we have concrete work and slabs scheduled sometime in the next probably 3 weeks. Those systems will start going in, and then finally the public will begin seeing things come out of the ground after an extreme amount of work to this point. And then after that, really just straightforward construction begins, and off we go. One of the unforeseen advantages that we had through this process is almost the entire project's already been through submittal. So the minutia of the project has been covered. Why we had this extra time. We know what the doorknobs are going to look like and what kind of light switches we're going to put in. And so all of those small details have already been addressed, which is really now going to help speed the project along. In fact, most of that equipment is already on order.
That's excellent. So we'll be able to avoid some of those delays, hopefully, in the pipeline of those products. I notice that in the budget update for the Crisis Center, there's a grant from Energy Trust. I'm assuming that as we get closer to this stage in the new courthouse and EOC projects, that there will also be Energy Trust money and some additional sustainability elements.
Correct. We've been in liaison with Energy Trust from the beginning. So we're on the radar with their new buildings people, and they've been receiving plans updates as we've moved along through the projects.
Excellent.
With Energy Trust money, it's always kind of a pleasant surprise in terms of those. It's hard to forecast those for sure, but once those rebates come in, we're able then to apply them and save dollars in other areas, or be able to provide additional resources since the expenditure actually has already occurred. I think the other thing that's worth noting here on the Crisis Center, and I don't know, Paul, on it in terms of update, but is the NEPA survey work in terms of completing all of that? Is that at a solid place?
It's at its sort of final stages right now. We're just, we have a meeting coming up with HRSA to discuss their needs for this NEPA survey and to see if we've actually met those at this point. Because the question comes up, do you have a contaminated site? Well, the answer is yes. Clearly, that's the case, and we've been working through that. And so we'll be meeting with HRSA, I believe, next week to sort of finalize that.
And that's important because that's basically key for us to be able to release the federal dollars that you see there. And those dollars, again, are critical to this particular project. So certainly we want to be able to get through that process and get final access to the federal resources, which we don't anticipate any problems. But again, as I say, I always like to make sure it's signed, sealed, and delivered before we count on it.
Can I make just a little comment about the environmental or the contaminated site? I know it's been a pain in the neck for us, but I mean, in the long run, I guess the silver lining is that it's really good. We did the right thing, you know, from an environmental standpoint. It's good to get it cleaned up. So that's something good for our community.
Thank you, Commissioner Wise. That's a point I've made from the beginning. Only the partnership between Benton County, our state partners, Girding Builders, PBS Engineering, a lot of very smart people were able to take this site on a busy corner in downtown Corvallis and turn it into something useful. Because the reality of the site was that just about anybody else would have taken one look at it and it would have remained a parking lot for all eternity.
And to Commissioner Wise's point, I mean, great partnership with all internal staff on this, because this felt like a project that, you know, there was always something new that was happening. And, you know, I compliment Damian Sands, who has really stepped in and helped us with some partnerships at Health Authority on some critical resources that weren't in the budget. So yeah, all hands on deck on this one. And, but I feel pretty good about where we're at.
Rick, with your caution about not counting your the money before it comes in, you actually sound like a finance guy.
I know it's hard for me to really to get that get away from it. It'll always be here. I'm sorry to say.
We appreciate it.
The last project I'll update you on, I'll just kind of start with a little bit of a I don't want to say a joke, but you know, Paul and I were just talking about this. It was I was looking through a recent Teams chat for something, and I found a chat between Paul and myself, because we're always talking about things here and there. And it was this chat where Paul said, "Hey, Rick, you know, we've been talking about the needs for children and family services. And obviously we all know, and we're disappointed with the failure of the bond measure where we weren't able to be able to meet that critical need." And so Paul just pointed out, "Hey, look at this." And it was last September, it was right on September that Paul had sent that to me. And the reason I bring that up, it by far for me, one of the most amazing experiences I've had in terms of any kind of project, on how everything seemed to come together without a hitch. I mean, it's amazing to me that Paul brought it up. You know, we come to the commissioners to talk about the need. Vance was critical in jumping in and helping in terms of, you know, being able to work through the real estate process and getting Gary Pons in place to really help support us. And I kept continuing to wait, okay, what's going to happen here? Of course, we were dependent on funding that would have to come in the state legislature. And then Paul went through the process of doing his due diligence. And I kept waiting. Something's not going to go right. Sure enough, we get through that process. We get to the state legislature, and you know, gosh, the money was appropriated. And again, it's just I'm still amazed that this all came together so quickly. And here we are in April, and already have people in the building who love it and is meeting their needs so well. And we have so many opportunities going forward with this new building and the location. So it started with Paul, though, and so I want to recognize that and just saying, hey, you know, I know the needs out there, and bringing up an idea. There's never a bad idea, and here we are, you know, less than a year later with a new building that is really going to be critical for us going forward. So again, just wanted to recognize Paul on that, because it started with him.
Thank you. Kudos. And your facilities team was awesome in bringing this together along with Vance and our IT team and all of the other folks that chipped in. I know there were many. And I think that it's just karma, after the crisis center delays and the challenges with the community safety and justice site, this one just, saved us the time.
Nice to have, we deserved it, right?
You never want to think that you deserve it because then that's when things go wrong. But yes, it balances out is what I'm hoping to say. But it's fantastic resource. And with all of that, you've acknowledged just how much of the funding for these new facilities has come from the state legislature. And I do want to shout out to Speaker Rayfield and to Senator Gelser-Bluen and our other legislators for support, because without them, we would not have been able to make this happen.
I will turn it over to Paul just to talk about anything, but I think, we're almost to the point where this project is, from our standpoint, a closeout. I think it's the HVAC work that is left, but I'll let him give you just a quick update on kind of where that stands.
Yeah, the building's at the point of being substantially complete. We're in essence finished. We have one large project to replace the HVAC system for the building. That's in contracting right now. In fact, I'm expecting an executed contract here in the next couple of days. And that's really sort of the last piece of that pie.
And I guess one last thing I'll add just as it relates to the budget, because obviously, the majority of this is $5 million from a state general fund appropriation that we got here in the last session. You will note you see $4.2 million in this budget. So when we set up that legislative request, it was to support the acquisition of this building and other health-related projects. One that you'll probably be hearing more from us in the future is the Monroe Clinic replacement project. And I think you all know we got $1 million for federal fund support for that project. These dollars I've always sort of kept as a potential use of those. There is some other federal resources that we're kind of running out of time in relation to being able to allocate those. I think we have some challenges ahead of us in relation to maybe some additional resource needs based on the design, but that's something you'll hear more for the future. I won't get into a lot of details for you right now, but I just wanted to let you know that's kind of where these resources are. These additional resources would be targeted to help support that project going forward. So with that, any questions in relation to any of these?
Yep. This is, I guess, my theme. This project and the timeline that it went from not existing last early September to being in operation in April. Once again, I think we need to get the word out that we've recognized some of our needs and figured out ways, creative ways to finance and move projects forward. And this one should be at the top of the list of look at what Benton County can do. And, I think we were due for something, a project that came together and moved forward at warp speed. So appreciate all the effort that went into it and had a modest open house last week, and maybe we can have another celebration for adding this building, and buildings don't mean much. It's what goes on in the building, and from everything I've heard, the people that work there are thrilled at the facility, and that there may be room for expansion.
Yeah, throw out to for Christy Reiser for Children's Family and Behavioral Health, and her team have been amazing through this entire process. It's often not easy to be picked up from one location, unceremoniously trucked across town and dropped off somewhere else. And they've been amazing through the entire project.
Well, and the nice thing about this facility is our Sunset building is next door, and Oregon DHS is across the street, and then this building. So we really have some critical mass in this area, and I think that will serve our community well going forward.
I just want to say a couple more things. Number one, thank you very much for bringing us this update. I really appreciate the kind of concise formatting. It's uniform. It makes it really easy to read. And then I also wanted to share that over the weekend, I was reflecting back on, you know, what the county looked like in 2016 and where we are at today. And I just felt a very strong sense of pride and gratitude for how far the county has come with all of our employees and staffs and partnerships. Everyone has had a role to play in that. And I feel very fortunate to get to be a Benton County Commissioner. So thank you.
Thank you. I too really appreciated the format of the update, and I'm hoping that those will monthly now be able to roll onto a website and yes, provide the community with a regular update as well.
In work in progress right now, we're working with IT on that, and I can guarantee you'll have a nice, and it'll be even broader than, these are obviously our major projects that we want you to be aware of, but there's a lot of other good stuff to talk about as well.
Thank you. It's excellent. I really appreciate it. Okay. At this time, we will shift into public hearing mode. And we will be holding public hearing for the approval of supplemental countywide budget number 241201, resolution numbered R 2024-008. And Jen Ambule is with us today. Will you please present the budget amendment?
Can't see you. Put my glasses on. Hello. Good morning. I am here to present the countywide supplemental budget 241201. I won't bore you with extremely detailed report. You've all seen this presentation once before. Just some key points. We are asking to increase appropriations $11.6 million, which estimates to be a 2.3% budget increase. The largest changes for those increases are to the capital outlay and the contingency. Capital outlay is primarily due to the $5 million that Mr. Krager did reference here just a moment ago. And that would be for the Children's and Family Behavioral Health building. Additionally, we do have a $2.5 million increase for the development and implementation of 11 housing units through SB 5701. Contingency increase is driven by the CHC/behavioral health budget reshoot. Beginning balances in the general fund for behavioral health were larger than anticipated. Therefore, we did increase those in this process and then moved the balance to contingency until there is a plan to spend it. And that is the brief summary of what we are asking to do.
Are there any questions for Jen?
Yeah, I've got one. It's titled Treasury Management Fund, and 1.4 million. Is that interest on money that we've been talking about delays and wishing we could move faster, but there are some. It looks like there's some advantages to not moving so fast and spending money.
Well, yes, that is true. And yes, this is interest earnings. It's the other funds the county holds. We've just had higher rates of return. And so in order to pass those funds on to the departments, we do need to increase the authority.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to testify on this supplemental budget? Hearing none, I will now close the public hearing, and I'm ready for a motion.
I move to adopt resolution R 2024-008 in the matter of supplemental budget 241201.
Second.
All in favor, please signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you again in a little bit.
Okay. Yes, expect that at the end of the year. Next, we are going to go backwards to the consent calendar. The consent calendar contains minutes from the March 5th board meeting.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And we move on now to an item of old business, equity, diversity, and inclusion position update from Sean McGuire and Sherry Chen Jackson and Phil Jacobs. And I believe it's Sherry and Sean presenting today, and they are both virtual.
Well, thank you, commissioners. Appreciate that. You've met Sherry. Many of you have met Sherry before. I want to begin by thanking the chair and for Rachel. This has been peculiar timing. As you all know, I'm down in San Diego, so I want to thank you both for the timing, and of course, Maura, Amanda, Erica, the whole amazing team that makes this all work behind the scenes. So this was not a normal meeting, so I want to thank them all. I wanted to begin. Want to let some of the speakers know that we did invite our county's equity committee and some of our partners. So I wanted to begin with a background that some of you may have heard, but want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So this process, it all started back in December when our then EDI coordinator within the Board of Commissioners office moved over to the health department, her name, Sarah. And when that happened, Rachel and leadership decided, let's take a break, let's take a pause and re-examine the position and our organization and where we are, and perhaps look at how we can change that to put ourselves in a better position of future success. So first step, I kind of reached out to some of our local EDI offices, both in King County and Portland, got their feedback and talked to a few consultants, and then met with Sherry at UPD Consulting, and I'll let her give a brief background on the UPD Consulting. And then we contracted with her, her and her team, and it's been a really wonderful and confidence-inducing process. We started out by interviewing about 10 to 12 staff members. Sherry and Philip conducted those interviews. We really wanted to have both a vertical and a horizontal approach to who was being interviewed. Vertical, that is to say, we included pretty much every department and office, getting to the previous comment, and also making sure that horizontally we talked to directors, managers, and staff to really get a more holistic view and looking at it from all angles about what we actually need, what staff and leadership think that we need to embed and implement moving forward for a better future. So Sherry and Philip and their team have produced and presented a few briefings along the way. This will be their final report. Some of you, and I'm very excited about this, and some of you may have seen those previously, but there's some new added information at the end, including a roadmap moving forward. I just want to plant the seed here. We had a previous briefing, and I just want to be crystal clear. This is UPD's recommendations or thoughts about what the county can do before the next coordinator, whatever that position evolves into. That was not vetted. It was just a, hey, here you go. So just to make sure that what you see is not something that has gone through any internal process. It's a starting point, as Sherry perfectly said the last time we had a briefing. So that's the purpose of today. Before handing it over to Sherry, I didn't know if there were any background questions that any commissioner had. Okay. Hearing none, Sherry, if you want to take it over, that'd be great.
Good morning, everyone. I'm still on the East Coast here, but I think it's still morning for you all. Thank you for having me today. For those of you who have not met myself or my team member before, we are UPD Consulting. We are a management consulting organization that's focused on equity-centered change, organizational improvement. We were founded by a handful of us who were leaders and managers who came from the public sector. And when we worked inside the system, we were tasked with implementing large-scale reform initiatives. And in some cases, that was a financial overhaul, or it was filling a sort of a big a high vacancy set of positions, or dealing with our city's vacant and abandoned housing. And it was sort of fixing problems and improving performance. When we formed our company, we wanted to provide a service to our public sector clients that we felt was missing when we were working inside the system. There were never any shortage of great ideas or strategies. It was just like, you know, we want to do this, but how do we make the work happen? So we are a company that wants to be like, to help you implement change. We have always been focused on equity implicitly through our clientele, but over the last 5 years, we started doing more and more of the DEI, EDI focused work. But what we discovered is it's still change. It's organizational change work. And the more that you tie it with the organization's vision for where you want to be going, where this county wants to be going in the future, to be a thriving, resilient county, to tie your EDI work with that is your best chance of success. And that's what we've discovered in our work and our focus. And even in this very quick engagement with Benton County, it was sort of how do you get started on the change work while you're waiting for doing a bigger, more comprehensive assessment, while you're waiting for folks to get trained. How do you just get started? And I think that is where we landed in this very short engagement. It was not a comprehensive review of anything, and we certainly didn't do any co-design or planning. And so this is our thing. It is not saying you must do it or anybody signed off on it, but just to give you some ideas about how to get started on that change work. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through. Some of you have already heard what the, if we can just go to the next slide. We basically we had a handful of conversations, and a handful meaning about 10 to 12 different conversations with various leaders across the county. I put this up because this was one of the more powerful quotes. It's a lot of words there, but what we took away, we heard and felt like it resonated, was that in some ways, you know, we're talking about this EDI coordinator and how to find the perfect person who will stay and do all the work they need to be doing. But this person said, you know, we kind of all need to be coordinators. If we don't all buy into it, we're not going to be able to move forward. It impacts all of our jobs. And before you all get scared to think like you've got a new like job description tacked on, this is not what they meant. It was like, how do we sort of live the values and sort of carry out the equity work within our day-to-day jobs, because it makes us better. It makes our work better, and it helps us fulfill our mission as people who work in public service. So let's go to the next slide. So I'll open actually with just some sense in our experience and what we are seeing across the country is the cost of not embracing EDI, meaning sort of keeping it siloed and separate, and you know under investing in it. It results in these you know really broad performance issues, loss of community trust and engagement, ineffective resource allocation, legal troubles and reputational issues, and certainly missed opportunities for innovation and growth, and overall diminished organizational performance. And, you know, at another time, you know, we can unpack these, because I think it's worth noting, like, this is not just a moral imperative around equity, diversity, and inclusion. It is an organizational, it is centered to the mission, to the public service mission. And what happens when it's not sort of embraced and sort of integrated across the work of the county are these things. So let's go to the next slide. Just a quick overview of what we learned in the interview process. And again, there was a group of, I think about 10-ish, 10 to 12 director or other folks in leader and manager positions in various departments. We asked some questions, just a really broad question around tell us about what you think is like the state of EDI in your county. What do you see as long-term outcomes? Like if Benton County was doing EDI, like what would you see change? What would you see happening? And so the first two around the state of EDI and the desired outcomes synthesizes what we heard across the folks that we had spoken to. We asked people what you see as your role in EDI outcomes and sort of where do you fit into all of this? And then on the right side, we talked specifically about the coordinator, and some folks knew the previous coordinators and experienced working with them, and others and may not have. But there was a lot of alignment around just the lack of focus and prioritization with that position. And there was a lot of alignment around the need for that coordinator to be really supported in their role because so that they don't get left out on an island. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So we have, and Sean has this, we documented all of the conversations we had, the notes from the interviews, if anybody is interested at any point. Going to slide 5. After synthesizing the, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong screen, thanks. Sorry, the previous, no, that's right. Here. After synthesizing our interviews, we came forward, we presented to the county administrator and the leadership team really sort of 2 areas that you should prioritize now, we believe. One is around organizational alignment, and the second is around leadership engagement. And this is based on what we heard and really our experience in working with a number of small, medium, and large organizations, particularly in the public sector, tackling issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I think where the start is, because oftentimes there's an inclination to think like everybody needs to be trained. Everybody needs to sit in a focus group or survey. And I think those are all very, important tactics that are part of this process. But we wanted to sort of narrow your focus around this concept of organizational alignment. How do you tie EDI efforts to your organizational mission and goals across for the county and at the department level? And the ways in which EDI work actually advance your program outcomes and the departmental improvement priorities that you have. And how do you embed these outcomes into the department goals so it doesn't feel like a separate siloed thing, and that it's an essential part. The way that sustainability, I think, is already an essential part of how each department is working in general. The second area is around leadership engagement. And this is both what we heard and also our experience, that the EDI coordinator, the chief diversity officer, the DEI director, they often end up on an island. I think that before we started this engagement, I chatted with Sean about I don't have it in front of me, but the turnover in the last 3 years with this people in this position is incredibly high, and it's increasing. And why? Because there's the underinvestment in the work in general, but more importantly, it's this person or even sometimes a small team being on an island and it not being integrated and really the work of the organization. So in our experience, we have found some ways in which to engage leadership across multiple departments to try to foster some shared ownership. The concept of distributing leadership around EDI across departments in a way that ties to the first piece, which is in a way that is not separate work, that ties to the work that you already are doing or need to be doing to improve your performance outcomes as a department. And so we have some ideas that we then unpacked. I'll talk about in a moment about how to, what are some strategies for engaging leadership and for integrating some of the EDI work across departments, leveraging, early adopters. Those, I think we all know there are some departments that have been doing great things already that can be built upon. And then, buildings, doing some competency and sort of knowledge development, and this is where training comes in, for how to lead EDI change. And I want to emphasize, this is what our bullet is here is not about like everybody needs like unconscious bias training. It's actually like how to lead EDI work when you're not an expert. You don't speak the speak. You haven't read everything that the others have read, or you don't, it's just not within your, that's not where you are, or it is. We have a mix of everybody sort of in a different place in their journey, but everybody can still lead the work when it's aligned to the sort of organizational outcomes that you're focused on, and that you don't have to become an EDI expert, nor do you need to put all of the responsibility on the EDI coordinator to sort of be able to answer every question about EDI. Okay, so we can move forward. We made some broad recommendations for the EDI coordinator role, and then we did also follow up with Sean and the county administrator with some specific examples. But we said that, think about the coordinator role as a facilitator rather than the sole owner of EDI efforts. That the person plays sort of a consultative role with the other departments to address specific areas of improvement and how to integrate and take an equity lens to their operations. On the right side, the skill set, and this was, I think, a big aha for this group, which was like how do we shift the focal point to change management and organizational performance? But this person also comes in with an orientation around equity, diversity, and inclusion, and the ability to apply that equity lens. But the leading skill set is not, I know all things about EDI. It's that, they actually understand organizational development and performance and change management, because that is the work that we are doing anyway as a county, as departments, trying to improve in our service delivery, our efficiency, our engagement with our communities. The performance goals that we have, where we want to get better, it's change. And this person, like all the new generation of folks that you're bringing in, should bring in certain skill sets around being able to manage that change work. And in some ways, this coordinator is no different. There were lots of discussion about role placement. And I think what we discovered and what we heard in the conversations was really the placement, it makes the most sense to probably keep them and put them in the Board of Commissioners office. However, the more important piece is that unequivocal support of an executive sponsor, so that this person, where you're going to land in terms of classification, still has the backing and the authority to influence and to shepherd the decision-making that needs to happen, and to be able to sort of assert leadership in moving the improvement work. And so if it is a coordinator position where you have no sort of on paper authority, where's the support and what does that look like to make sure that that person is speaking, on behalf of the county leadership to be able to move that work. Right. Fine. This is just an overview of our process. It took about 4.5, 5 weeks where we did our interviews. We processed and internalized and unpacked what we heard from the interviews. We did some analysis of the EDI role, and then we came back to leadership with our recommendations. Go to the last slide. So this is a summary of a more detailed roadmap that we presented to the county leadership team. And we sort of broke up thinking about like, what does your next year look like as you, as soon as you can onboard a new person into the position, but that still may take, 6 months, 3 months at best, 6 months, hopefully. And what can you do while you are in the queue for doing a more comprehensive EDI assessment? And so we thought about the 2 organizational priorities around organizational alignment and leadership engagement. And we broke it up into quarters. And so thinking about the first 3 months, the first quarter is really figuring out like, how do we lay some foundations for EDI stewardship? Stewardship is in quotes. It's a concept around like, how do you build that that sort of shared ownership and sense of responsibility for EDI within each department. And so we had in the more detailed document some ideas for how to design and stand that piece up. It's based on a model that we're implementing for another municipality where we have found some very strong signs of success, where it's like, this is where, you know, when you're doing the work of EDI, it stops being an uphill battle because every department has a real stake in the work. And so that is what I mean by EDI stewardship. It is sort of it is a distributed leadership type program that you might consider investing in. There's obviously revising and reposting the vacant position, perhaps considering it to be more of a leadership position. I think that's, you know, for you all to discover if that's possible. Within the next the 3 to 6 months to be able to hire and onboard that position. And here's where perhaps some of our audience might have been surprised that the focus is actually thinking about performance. Like, what does organizational performance look like for the county and by department? Like, what are your performance priorities? So if we just spitball an example in the Department of Public Works, like, you know, when you think about, like, it's not everything that that division does, but like, what's really important? Essential services. Where are we trying to get better? I don't know, timeliness of response times, call, work order, backlogs, whatever those are. Every department has a set of improvement priorities, like where I really, really need to see these outcomes change. And through that lens, you can start looking at the equity. Are there equity implementations or implications? Are there gaps? Are there needs not being served? Are there accessibility issues? Are there missed opportunities? Are there sort of disproportionate allocation of resources here and there? But the starting point is to not be searching for, like, where's the equity issue? We should be doing this, versus like, what are your priorities for improvement in general? And then there are ways to look at the data to collect feedback and insights and to sort of see, to be able to see this problem through an equity lens and make sure that whatever solutions being designed are taking equity into account. The third component is starting to plan for some professional learning for a sort of a group of leadership level folks across the different departments. And again, whether you've launched a steward process or you identify a small team from each department, but it's to start a learning arc there. And again, remember I said the learning arc is not about like unveil your unconscious bias, but it is about how do you get to action without being that expert. In 6 to 9 months, say, designing a performance management routine. And so I come from a world of performance management, you know, where it is, you know, a process where we are reviewing, reporting out on data and collaborating across managers to solve a problem around a performance issue. And so some of we're bringing some of that experience that we have to say, like, there's a way to come together around a performance goal, a set of data, and have collaborative problem solving and improvement conversations around it, and talk about the equity needs and the equity implications. But you see, like, this in the short-term roadmap, like, we're really still focused on like getting some basic routines in place to be able to start some data-driven conversations. It is not a like you have to invest wholesale in like an entirely new data collection, a new system, a dashboard. It's actually quite simple. It's like you want to fill potholes more efficiently. You want more folks coming into your community health centers. You want more, you know, customer satisfaction when they're calling in to get help regarding, you know, their permits. Like, it's an outcome. It's what data do you have, and how do you build a structured conversation around that particular outcome that you want to change. And you may see that you actually need to change it to affect certain populations or stakeholders. In this time, after you've designed and have a professional development arc, that gets launched, and that a group of county leaders or stewards, whatever you call them, are starting this process of doing some learning and unpacking and practicing together. We are really strong proponents, again, of like not just doing training for training and being like, you know, having your mind blown, but then leaving the session and being like, I don't know what to do. I'm so overwhelmed. And that happens a lot in DEI training versus a way of designing this where like it's about practice. And it's about sort of taking incremental pieces and trying something new, whether it is facilitating and having a hard conversation, or maybe it's talking about an existing practice in your department or division that you want to unpack. Like it's just taking it very slowly, and it's emphasizing practice over like tons of new knowledge about EDI, sorry. When we think about, so going into the final quarter of the year, and thinking about what a performance management routine looks like at the county level, we would recommend to not go full force, like every department, everybody has to be engaged, and there needs to be a like comprehensive set of metrics versus like, let's start with a couple of early adopters, a couple of departments that are ready to focus on one or two priority improvement areas, and ready to start with some imperfect data, ready to have some of these cyclical short, you know, conversations to say like, hey, what is the data telling us about what we're doing? How is it, you know, what do we expect to change in the next period of time? Let's go do it, and let's come back and look and see what our data are telling us. And in this work is where those EDI issues start to get surfaced and elevated. And it is where then, you know, in the improvement conversation, you know, looking at data, talking about why are we seeing the outcomes that we're seeing? What can we do to improve our outcomes? You know, are there practices that can shift and change when we look at how data might, in our data, how our services are disproportionately serving some over others or harming some others, right? The EDI issues become elevated in these conversations and the design of the solutions. And here's where the person that you hire can say, well, part of my job is to bring in some research and knowledge and best practices to say, you know, maybe here's an opportunity for it to explore, you know, I'll just throw it out there, like a restorative law enforcement practice around this particular thing with community safety, right? Like this is, it's not leading with like, we have to do this practice. It's more, oh, when we see our data are telling us this about what's happening, what is it that we want to change to improve that outcome? And what is it we want to better understand when we are serving, you know, more marginalized populations? And so that it is sort of our recommendation about how we start to like work some of our muscles around both EDI and organizational change without, you know, while you are waiting to build out a bigger, you know, your strategic plan is happening, your EDI full-scale assessment is happening, but you all can position yourselves to be more ready to do the work as opposed to waiting for the, you know, another 2 years before work actually happens. So that's all that we have. There's a more detailed document here. Again, just as a suggested roadmap. I'm not saying like it's, you know, like you take it and like, here's your answer and you go do it. Like there's tons of unpacking to do, but this is kind of where we ended up at the end of the 4-week engagement. I am happy to ask questions, to hear reactions and responses, and, you know, can be available.
Questions? Well, Sherry, I would like to say that I appreciate the very rapid turnaround of this work that you have done with the county. It was a swift and focused project. And I think that the voices you heard really do capture the essence of what we have experienced with an equity, diversity, and inclusion coordinator position. And personally, I think that the recommendations are spot on, that this work is work that needs to be focused on the core objectives of our teams to serve our community better every day, and that needs to be integrated with our regular work rather than something on top of or in addition to, or that's kind of mystifying to some. So I think there are many ways to do that. I like the fact that you have laid out this 1-year approach, and that it takes on the project in a very bite-sized and doable way So I thank you and your team for this presentation.
I just wanted to further thank Sherry, as well as her partner, Philip, for really doing a deep dive and talking to so many of our folks across Benton County. Change management is hard. It's difficult. Sometimes we talk a lot about how government, we're a little slow. I don't think that's the case here in Benton County. I think we're very committed, and we needed this roadmap to begin to thoughtfully make good choices. I just wanted you to point out, when you first started with us, there was a statistic that you had reported on EDI, DEI coordinators, directors. In your experience, the turnover, how often it is right now with from the work that you've been doing since you've been with this organization and in your last experience.
I'm sorry, can you ask, was that a question?
Yeah, sorry, it was a question. Just that there was a pretty strong data point that you pointed to about the turnover in positions that have really EDI or DEI in their placement. I'm reading in different magazines and reports of the turnover rate. Do you remember that when we first started?
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up. Give me just 1 second, but it was really high. I want to say it was
like very high, yeah,
8%, or something like that. Yeah, I will find it.
Regardless, I think this was why this was such important. 60%. So we want to set up this individual or team to be successful. And I truly appreciate working with you and your thought leadership and the work that you provided. And also, I realize that you just love the West Coast so much, so you're going to be moving to our time frame. So we really appreciate you and joining Washington State and becoming part of the West Coast.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. That's news to me, and I think that's great news. Commissioner Malone.
Yeah, great discussion, and having a couple EDI coordinators, I think things were a little amorphous as far as what their duties were. And I really appreciate the direction and the term roadmap has been used a time or two. And I think that's accurate, and just how to really integrate this position into all our department efforts, I think, is a very worthy goal. And so appreciate the help in getting us on track.
Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you. I will also say thank you. And I appreciate the roadmap. I think one of the hardest parts of any big project is just knowing where to start. And then how to get there along the way. So that's much appreciated. And I also appreciate Rachel calling out and asking about that trend. And thank you, Sherry, for sharing it. Along the way, we definitely want to keep an eye out for those reasons why people leave and why programs are not effective, making sure that we have alignment and resources and all that stuff. So that's much appreciated.
Thank you. Yeah, I know that many of our departments already have requirements to track racial and ethnic disparities and to track the people that they serve and to make sure that we are providing access across our entire community. So I think we can find a couple, 3 pilot programs, pilot teams to start with without much trouble. And I just want to emphasize again that it's all about access to services and access to decision makers, sense of belonging, both among community members, but also among our own employees, and retention as well as belonging, and then culturally appropriate services, because we know that one size doesn't fit all. So this is a good first step, and I really appreciate the hand up that UPD has provided us.
And Chair, if I can, I just want to also share with you all just the immense pleasure and mad respect for Sherry and her team. Not only her coming and having the wisdom to move from Maryland to the best coast, but also just it's just been great. Every conversation has been top notch, and it's just been awesome to work with her and her team. So wanted to share that. And thank you for the time today.
Thank you. And I wanted to highlight for those of you who haven't looked at the board packet that there are also in this slide deck some case studies of other locales, other governments, and some of the successful practices. So it's worth looking at if you want to dig deep.
And in conclusion with that, something we Sherry and I have been doing the past couple of days, and my sincere apologies just because of me being out of away. Sherry has wonderfully given us a few extra links. I'm going to pull all that stuff together when I'm back in Corvallis and kind of wrap it into more of a bow and then have all of it in one shot. So, and then we'll share that with the equity committee as well. So you have all resources in one spot. So just give you that.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to our next item.
Thank you all.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you all. Thanks.
Thank you both. Well, next up, we have item 9.1, discussion and action on the Stand By Me Oregon program. Alicia Lucky from Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments is here. And the agenda lists Jeremy Martin, but I'm sure that Rick Krager can step in if we need a finance perspective.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here this morning. My name is Alicia Lucky, and I'm a program manager with the Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments. And I am happy to provide an update on Stand By Me. I oversee our Benton County Veteran Service contract, all of our AmeriCorps seniors programs, help quite a bit with Meals on Wheels and also this project. And I have to say that this one is pretty near and dear to my heart just because I've been able to work with it since its inception. You'll see in your update that we have served a little over 105 clients since the start of Stand By Me. As a reminder, it's a free financial coaching program where we focus on 4 major metrics: savings, debt, credit, and building a budget. This was replicated, as you know, from the state of Delaware. Thanks to Commissioner Ogerow hearing about the program. Thank you to the county for providing COG with seed money. Right before COVID, we were still able to replicate it and become successful. It's important to me to note that from the beginning, it was really important to our team that we would reach out specifically to Latinos. When we had our first coaching cohort, we noticed that almost 50% of us were Spanish speaking. And so right from the get-go, we were quite intentional about reaching out to Latinos and focusing on financial literacy. As such, you'll see that currently 74% of our participants are female and almost a quarter are Latino. And we hope for that percentage to grow over time. 91% of our clients have taken action to create a spending plan. 67% have taken action to increase their credit score. 60% have taken action to reduce debt, and 85% have taken action to build savings. And so all of those things are tracked in a tool that we call Coach Connect. Part of my ask here today, it's a small ask, $4,000 for fiscal year 2025 and 26, helps cover that Coach Connect license. I'll pause there for any questions.
Are there any questions at this time? No.
Okay, thank you. So the only other thing I wanted to say is there's been a few updates since this was written last month. Currently we have, it said 13 trained community volunteers. Just in the last month, we held another training. And actually there was a picture taken by Samaritan Health Services during the training, and we will be featured in the Community Health Impact Report for our Social Accountability Grant, which is pretty neat. We have 3 new coaches from Kitco Head Start, Young Roots Oregon, and the Mid-Willamette Valley Trans Support Network, which I think was here earlier today for the proclamation. So we're excited to add them to our crew. The bulk of our referrals come in through financial workshops that we do. We've done almost 60 workshops since we've started, and we've found that that's really a great way to get folks into the door. No one's really eager to call and say, hey, I have this looming debt, or I have, a hard time figuring out which bill to pay down first. We always say we're not life coaches and we're not financial advisors. We're kind of somewhere in the middle. We do a lot of person-centered coaching, a lot of talking with people about their money history and beliefs, a lot of talk about how did your folks, when they raised you, talk about money, a lot of talk about how financial wellness fits into your overall wellness wheel, your physical, your mental health. That could all be great. But if you have a looming debt in the back of your brain, that can really throw off relationships. So we do a lot of chat there. Some quick highlights of the workshops we've done in Benton County over the past year. We were able to teach a week-long course at Crescent Valley High School in December, and we did a class on spending wants and needs. We also put in a compound interest calculator to show students, what a curse and blessing compound interest can be. And it went along really well. So we're hoping to do more in the K through 12 space moving forward. We also did a workshop in tandem with Casa Latinos Unidos. We did a lot of talleres or workshops on cómo comprar casa con I-10, how to buy a house with an I-10, how to budget for the holidays. We talk a lot about borrowing from your future self and using credit cards. So all really great stuff, very person-centered, and we have a bunch of momentum. We are just about to expand more into Lincoln County. I have an ask here that shows $15,500 from the Ford Family Foundation for that, but they just wrote me back last week and asked for us to ask for a three-year ask. So we have a lot of momentum. A part-time coordinator and myself, a consultant, 16 coaches. So it's pretty inexpensive, very cost effective, and just a really neat project.
The coaches, you're employing the model that was first developed in Delaware, correct? Those are not employees of the Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments, but they still remain employed at their initial employer, and this is a part of their portfolio of work?
That's correct. So we do have implementation partners housed at Kidco Head Start, Strengthening Rural Families, and a few others that are escaping me at the moment. But we also have kind of made it true to Oregon. As I said before, I oversee a variety of AmeriCorps seniors programs. So we're also using AmeriCorps senior volunteers. I have a great pool to draw from. I have volunteers that are already Sheba Medicare counselors, or they work with AERP tax aid during tax season. So if they have a propensity for loving money and not being able to get away from finances, then we recruit them and say, come join us as a Stand By Me coach. So I would say about half of our coaches are volunteers at this point. And we have AmeriCorps Vista starting in July to help us recruit more.
Excellent. Are there questions?
Yeah, I appreciate the update, and I think what would help me, you've got some statistics on percentages of who the program is serving. I think it'd be helpful if there was, now that the program has been in operation for a few years, to say this is how many different kinds of folks we served in 2023 compared to 22, and get some sense of what the trends are. What it sounds like we're headed in the right direction, but it'd be nice to have some statistics to back that up.
Sure. Yep. I can do that for you guys in a follow-up. I will say, so seed money came and COVID happened. So we didn't really start one-on-one coaching until like the very start of 2021. And we usually pull an all-time report of unique clients because many of our clients that started in 2021 are still clients today. So if they have a goal of, setting a spending plan and maybe starting a new job, and then a new goal of purchasing a car, that's a new goal in the system, and we keep them on the book. So it's not really you graduate from the program per se. We have a lot of people from that initial go. So that's why we typically run an all-time report, but I can send you the breakdown.
Maybe the way to do that would be to have those unique clients or families, and also the number of services or the number of goals. I don't know if Coach Connect allows you to do that, but that will give us both the sense of how many families we're helping, but also how many different goals we're helping those families with over time.
Sure.
I'm just very excited about this because to me it addresses one of those foundational needs. It's hard to have a roof over your head or enough food for the family if you don't know how to manage your money. So it goes way upstream. And I think that I'd like to see this expand exponentially so that we really can touch so many more families and prevent people from falling into some of our other social service or law enforcement systems.
I think our hope is to go statewide eventually. We just finished up our strategic planning for the next 3 years, and it's tempting, to want to expand a bit, but we also realize we need to stay within our parameters and kind of make sure the COG region is being served first.
Well, was just going to comment that one thing that jumped out to me was the 74% identified as female. And so that got me thinking, why are there more females than males? But then you mentioned the childcare facilities. So I wonder if that's the nexus or if there's any more parts to it that you have seen.
No, surprisingly enough, in Young Roots, Oregon, I don't know if you're familiar with the entity, but they provide services for adolescent parents. And the course that we took, we actually incentivized and offered, and a lot of the young parents had both the mom and dad and the baby present. So it's actually just a percentage of females asking for the services. We have, sometimes wives will say, you should call my husband and coach him separately. And so, we get into that a little bit, or we'll have a mom say, you should call my son. He just graduated and I don't know if he understands this debt. But what we found is what works best is when people sign up. It's essentially is, money therapy. And so for whatever reason, we're having more females call in and getting referred to us from DHS as well.
Okay, thank you.
Ready for a motion?
I would be happy to take a motion, but I think that Rick has a word first. This straddles fiscal years, biennia, so I'm curious about that.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Ogerow. So first of all, I just want to say it was odd that Alicia mentioned for people who love money, and she looked at me. So she knows me too well. I did want to just mention real quickly in terms of your motion that's written, I would recommend that your motion be specifically for one fiscal year, the $4,000 that Alicia had mentioned. The reason I would recommend that is that we did this last time where it's across biennial lines. And so I'd like to get this in alignment with the budget so that next time when you're doing your budget development, Alicia will come here before on the community development projects that you do through the application, you can award it within a budget period. So again, just kind of correcting the way we had put it forward last time.
So the idea is just $4,000 in
fiscal year
25. Okay. Well, I will move to approve the allocation of $4,000 to the Stand By Me project for fiscal year 2025.
Second.
All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to further growth, and it's very exciting.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up is Justin Carley from the Benton County Sheriff's Office. Captain Carley is going to present approval of the 2023-25 intergovernmental agreement between the state of Oregon and Benton County.
So good morning again. My name is Justin Carley. I work with the Sheriff's Office. I'm a captain there, and I oversee the Parole and Probation Division. And I'm here this morning to seek approval of an amendment to our IGA for increased funding for community corrections. We're currently in an IGA with the Department of Corrections for the 23-25 biennium. However, at the end of the short session, the legislature passed House Bill 5204, which resulted in $16 million in statewide community corrections funding. In Benton County's allocation of that $16 million is approximately $195,000. And these dollars are ready to be allocated to the counties, but the Department of Corrections required an amendment to the current IGA to receive this funding, and that's what's brought me here today. I even received this morning another reminder email that they're ready to allocate these dollars starting July 1. So the timing of this is very good. So essentially an approval of the amendment will meet the requirements to receive these dollars for the increased funding as a result of the House bill.
Can you tell us how this increase in funding will be used?
So we're still making decisions on that because we have just as you know, the backstory on the sustainable community corrections funding is just not a strong one right now, and so we're looking ahead another biennium. We're staffed to the point right now where we can handle the current workload. We feel like our programs also are very, very solid and in place, but I have my eyes on the next biennium in terms of where we will be with funding, whether or not it's fully funded the next biennium, and what type of carryover we will have as a result of being fiscally conservative this biennium as well. So there's more to come. We're having conversations with the sheriff in Dawndale about where we are currently in the budget, and then also what can we do with this. So,
and I know you have one position vacant right now, and you're still holding on to that and trying to figure out what's going on with the Measure 110 deflection program and various other elements. So yeah, look forward to that.
Yes.
Kind of a follow-up, make sure I understand. This money really isn't extra, or you're going to do something that you're not currently doing. It's for to support current operations.
Yes. So this is additional. These are additional dollars that essentially at halftime of our biennium came through as a result of that short session. And so we've already had our community corrections budget in place for the start of the 23-25 biennium. And so now mid-game, this House bill comes through with the increased $16 million. But if you back up to the beginning of the biennium, community corrections statewide was not fully funded.
And there's even more history to that, and that is that community corrections at the county level is funded based on time studies. And the last time study that was completed, the legislature did not fully fund community corrections. And so there was a pledge made at the legislature to address some of that deficit. And Speaker Rayfield was actually one of the major promoters of adding money to the community corrections coffers across the state, recognizing that the current workload was not fully compensated for. Okay, if there are no further questions, I'm ready for a motion.
I'll move to approve the 2023-2025 IGA number 6522 amendment number 1 between the state of Oregon and Benton County.
Second.
All in favor, please signify with an aye. 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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we are moving to another intergovernmental agreement, in this case for leasing of city property. And Rick Krager and April Holland are with us to present here. I'm not sure whether Rebecca Taylor is joining us virtually or whether she's not attending today.
Rebecca is enjoying some time away.
That's good. Okay.
Thanks again, commissioners. Seems like it's been forever since I've seen you last, so here I am again. I'm actually not going to talk much here. I'm going to really turn this over to April, but first I just want to say, and again, this is part of our efforts that have been ongoing around addressing the issue of homelessness in our community. Really want to, shout out to the coordinated homeless response that you mentioned, Rebecca Taylor, has been, critical and moving forward. And this has been a partnership that we had started back with the city of Corvallis. And you all recall we came to you, I believe, in February-ish to be able to talk to you a little bit about how we could really create a partnership of a planned acquisition of property along with our current programmatic dollars for services that we have been able to put through with the flex spending pool, as you've heard a lot about. So again, what we're here just to talk to you about today is the decision is made by on the part of the city of Corvallis to actually acquire a piece of property, which I believe actually occurred last night. And then how we would come in and be a partner with them with a future agreement on a future IGA to provide the services component. So with that, I'll just turn it over to April.
Thanks so much, Rick. Yeah, so this is an exciting step in our partnership with Corvallis as we coordinate our efforts around housing and homelessness. The city approved last night to use ARPA and DAS funds to purchase a property that has 7 upstairs units and some commercial units currently downstairs, mixed use. And also City Council approved the city portion of this intergovernmental agreement. The city's utilizing about $2 billion in ARPA and $1 million of DAS funds to purchase and rehabilitate this space, convert commercial space eventually, and to create a building reserve. And then we would embark upon, through this non-binding agreement, a master lease for the second floor apartments eventually, to utilize our HB 5019 and Oregon Rehousing Initiative funds through Oregon Housing and Community Services, through a combination of in-house coordinated office staff. If you recall, we've got 2 limited duration positions, a housing navigator and a program coordinator, and are embarking upon negotiations for a notice of funding opportunity for case management and street outreach components of this flexible housing subsidy pool program. So the purpose of the IGA is to establish the parameters for the negotiation of a more detailed master lease to come. According to the city meeting last night, the property is set to close on June 25th. The terms of the IGA you have in front of you, basically it outlines a strategy to achieve access to housing units for the flex pool. You'll see in the IGA that the city has several outlined responsibilities, and I'm really impressed and encouraged by the amount of thought and true partnership they're bringing us along with this agreement. You'll see that we're being very thoughtful together, and the city has funds to upkeep the property as well as undertake some essential safety related repairs that need to happen before occupancy occurs. We've come up with a rent structure, as well as who pays what breakdown, all of which will be more detailed in a master lease. And I will answer any questions you have, but first I want to acknowledge the hard work of Vance Croney. Thank you, Vance. Brigida Olson and Rebecca Taylor in getting this together in short order and to being very thoughtful. And also the city attorney. I know you worked really closely with our partners at the city. So what did I leave out? I'm not firing on all cylinders right now, so I might have left out something important. Thanks.
The only thing I might just add additionally, just so there's no confusion in terms of the resources that we're talking about. Clearly, this has been something we've been working on for some time with Corvallis is set aside along with, as April mentioned, the House Bill 5019 dollars. We also, as you all know, received $2.5 million during the last legislative session for also for housing for the homeless. And so that is something that we obviously will be coming to you in the near future in relation to opportunities there. That is just capital for the purposes of the use, but that also would be a partnership likely with the flexible spending pool going forward. Still a lot more details to be worked out on how we want to do it. But again, I just wanted to make sure, since I know you've talked about that, on no confusion between the different resources.
Thank you for that clarification. That did come up when I was reading through this. I thought the IGA was very thorough and was impressed with its development. Any questions?
Yeah, just want to make sure I understand. This is the start of the partnership, and there'll be further clarification. Who's responsible for what? But this agreement gets the project rolling. Am I correct in that?
Yes, Commissioner, this outlines the strategy, and I think it gets us a pretty long way in terms of who's responsible for what. We want to make sure that's understood just before we go to the lease level. So I think the details that are coming are, how the fair market rent might be adjusted when we incorporate utility costs, or we'll get into that level of detail. We're also working on the programmatic side, as we move forward with negotiations for case management and street outreach to determine those roles. So we've got an operational plan and those budget pieces to work through as well. And it's all coming together really quickly.
Okay, and I guess my other question is, and you've touched on it, but I understand capital costs, and those can be fairly closely delineated, but the ongoing costs that Benton County will be incurring, I guess I'd like a little more information on what the future funding for Benton County's role looks like.
Sure. So the intention in this agreement is not to have any general fund allocated to either the service on the city or the county side. In terms of the flexible housing subsidy pool, we are actively seeking funding beyond the 2027 funding that we currently have in hand. Oregon Housing and Community Services, we just submitted a new budget for current service level in order to hopefully receive sustained funding. I've mentioned this before, but units are so sorely needed in this severely rent burdened area. And there are programs out there serving people who want to serve people and have units as it's just a primary barrier. So as part of the flexible housing subsidy pool program, there are programs out there that have funding for rental assistance and other supports incorporated. So even if we don't have the same amount of funding in 2030 or 2028, having the units will be a boon to a great benefit to our community. And we will be there as long as our office is sustained. And we certainly plan on that being so, to help coordinate those resources across the system.
I would just add on everything April said exactly right. I think we're on the edges here of the flexible spending pool and what it really can be. We're just now getting underway. So I think to her point there, we're going to be working hard to continue to grow that. I think there's also huge amounts of state opportunities that will be coming because this is a significant priority investment on the part of our governor going forward. So I think that there's opportunities there. And the last thing I would say, one of the kind of cool things about this partnership and this particular project, one, it has no debt. So because it has no debt in the world of affordable housing, that leaves the opportunity, one, to reinvest into the capital deferred maintenance to make sure you always have a sound housing project. But more importantly, part of this agreement gives us the opportunity to partner with the Corvallis on considering reimbursement back to the flexible spending pool. So again, we're positioned nicely because of the fact that there is no debt to this, and we can make sure that that housing project is going to be sound, good, maintained well, which is important. And then we have opportunities to work with Corvallis on how to replenish the pool going forward. So again, appreciate always, Commissioner Malone, your focus on sustainability and financial viability. And I think there's still work ahead, but I think that we are positioned nicely in terms of continued support through the flex funding pool.
Oh, thank you. That's reassuring.
The other question I had is, my understanding is that this particular housing unit or units will be used primarily for transitional housing. So the vision is that people will be housed here, but that the plan is to find them other long-term housing where possible. Correct?
That's right. We haven't defined the terms necessarily around the length of transitional housing. I'm anticipating it'll be sort of a mid-range term, however amorphous that might sound, 3 to 6 months. I will share that another IGA that will be, an MOU that will be coming to you soon has to do with efforts around affordable housing developers, property managers, and landlords in order to increase the availability of units. We really are undertaking some intentional efforts to provide a lot of support to folks to encourage participation and the bringing together of folks who are ready to or want to hear more about leaning into the space.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's very important to have this transitional kind of space. We just don't have enough of it. And I know that the Sheriff's Office has also indicated interest in participating. So I think there are a lot of partners. They do bring some funding to the table too. A lot of these other partners do have some funding. And so that's part of the purpose of the whole Coordinated Homelessness Response Office and our staff is to braid that funding and to make sure that it stays viable. But the other piece that is not so well determined yet is the new Medicaid benefit for housing, and which again is very much of a transitional nature. It doesn't last very long, but it also is a source of dollars for this sort of transitional living space.
Thank you, Commissioner. We continue to learn as more is developed in that space with monthly CROW meetings with IHN. We look forward to seeing what's possible there.
And I appreciate the background information and just going back to our earlier discussions of the building projects that Benton County is involved in, and I think of the crisis center that's a block away from this facility, and it's just exciting and shows how seriously Benton County takes kind of filling in. I have an example that I won't go through, but the vast middle between the emergency room and correctional facility, that we need other options, and after decades of neglect, we're scrambling to fill in, and this is another important piece of the puzzle. Looking, and I did have one question. Is there zoning changes, challenges that come with this project?
Thank you, Commissioner. There are not. The downstairs units, should they become vacant by the commercial tenants, may be renovated and would not require a rezoning due to supersiding legislation for different types of housing available.
Great, thank you.
If there are no further questions, I'm ready for a motion.
I move to approve the City of Corvallis and Benton County IGA for leasing of city properties as part of a coordinated homeless response.
Second.
All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Progress, big progress. When do you anticipate people might move in?
Oh, good question. I'm hesitant to say. There are a lot of repairs that need to, it's a roof, sprinklers, some egress windows, and some plumbing repairs.
Okay.
I believe our partners at the city can get those done quickly with contractors, but we're looking at months.
Yeah, contractors are pretty slammed. Okay, thank you very much. Moving forward, the last formal item of business on our agenda is amending our collection franchise agreement. And Vance Crony is going to lead us off, but I see that Julie Jackson is also with us today from Republic Services.
Thank you, Commissioner Ojero. This is a request to amend the collection franchise agreement with, actually it's Allied Waste Services, but that is the parent company of Republic. As you know, we executed a franchise agreement back in 2022. That agreement called 2021, was it? 21, yeah, gosh, time is just slipping by. A couple of years ago. And the agreement called for a reopener such that Republic and Benton County could incorporate elements of both the Corvallis franchise agreement and the Benton County Talks Trash process into our collection agreement to make the operations more robust, more responsive to the waste stream needs, and essentially to mirror for our unincorporated clients the services and the opportunities that the city residents had through the Republic services. We have since, as you well know, embarked upon a project to create a sustainable management materials plan, which the expectation is that plan will identify waste streams, strategies, priorities, opportunities to reduce or divert those various waste stream elements. And it seems prudent to hold off on revisiting our collection franchise agreement until that SMMP is in place so that both Benton County and Republic can take a look at that document and fold into our collection agreement elements that are appropriate. And quite honestly, that SMMP holds much greater promise for bringing more valuable components than either the BC Benton County Talks Trash process or the Corvallis franchise agreement. Not to knock either one of those two, but The SMMP is much more tightly focused on this particular topic. So Republic has already agreed to extend the reopener date to July 1, 2027. The other component that our current franchise agreement calls for is that we would realign our termination date of our collection franchise agreement to coincide with Corvallis's, which is the end of 2034. So the agreement here changes termination date of our collection franchise agreement to be the same as Corvallis, which is December 31st, 2034. Pretty straightforward. The bottom line is moving the reopener back to July 1st, 2027.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. Once again, I'm ready for a motion.
I'd like to look clarification on the motion. There's the staff recommendation with specific date, and the meeting motion that we have does not have that date.
I'm looking at page 130. Well, so that's the staff recommendation. The motion is, it's the same. No.
Okay. Well, I will move to execute the amendment to the collection franchise agreement with Allied Waste Services of Corvallis.
Second.
All in favor signify with an aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any announcements today? Any other business before the board? Observing Commissioner Wise, I think we are good and done, and I am going to adjourn our meeting at 12:27 p.m. Thank you.
Well, but we have two service districts.
Thank you. We didn't get off so easy. Thank you for the reminder for the two service districts. Which one is up first? Okay, we will begin with the 911 Emergency Communications Service County Service District Governing Board meeting. And I will open that meeting at this time with comments from the public. Hearing none, we will invite Jen Ambule to briefly present and then go into public hearing.
Good afternoon. I promise I'll keep this very, very brief because we are all ready to go. The 911 Emergency Services District is requesting an increase in their proposed budget by $424,340, a 4.9% increase. The bulk of this is to create a transfer from our Intergovernmental Services Fund to refund duplicate facility space charges that happened. And then additionally, we are reducing the space charges in this fund because they're paid under the intergovernmental fund by the city. So they're just paid in a different location. So we're doing a little budget cleanup.
Are there any questions? Okay. Well, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to testify at this time? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and we will move on to deliberations or a motion.
I have I move to adopt resolution number R 2024-005 in the matter of supplemental budget 241202.
Second.
All in favor, please signify with an aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Is there any other business before the 911 County Service District Governing Board? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned at 12:29 p.m. We'll move on now and convene as the Cascade View County Service District Governing Board. Are there any comments from the public? Hearing none, we have approval of the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor signify with an eye.
Aye.
Aye. And Jen, we'll ask you again for a description of the supplemental budget.
Yes, Cascade View is here to request an increase in capital outlay of $20,000. The offset to that is they will be reducing their contingency by $20,000, and that is to pay for the replacement of the water pump for their drinking water.
Any questions? Okay, I'm ready for motion. No, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to testify? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. And now I am ready for a motion.
I move to adopt resolution number R 2024-009 in the matter of supplemental budget 24-1203.
Second.
All in favor, please signify with an eye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Is there any other business before Cascade View County Service District?
No.
Okay, we are adjourned. And with that, we have completed our formal business for the day. Thank you all.